Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
Now let's get this party started.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
This is the Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, live in Los Angeles. iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and right here, FS1. Joy Taylor is joining me.
Good morning.
Good morning. World Series. We got NBA stuff going on. NFL is going to be a huge week. We have a packed show today. Today is just a great show. This is such a good time of the year. And I wanted to start with this. You ever have a first day on the job? Heck, your first week at a job. Raise your hand. If you're driving in your car, don't raise your hand. Keep them on the wheel. Otherwise, raise your hand. If you had a first day on the job in the last 10 years, you know what you're always in that first day on the job fog. You got to meet a bunch of people and you can't remember half their names. Where's the bathroom? You got the IT guys trying to set you up. You got to go to human resources and fill out that first day on the job. That first week on the job, you don't know what floor this boss is on. You forget which hallway to take to your cubicle. You're in that first week on the job, first day on the job fog. And the Dodgers were in a fog last night. Warm weather Los Angeles, cold, wet, damp, windy Fenway Park. Fenway Park's the quirkiest park in baseball. This is not an excuse. I still think Boston's going to win the series, and I think Boston has more good players. But the Dodgers got a break last night. Chris Sale, the ace for the Red Sox, was not on his best stuff, couldn't finish the fifth. It didn't matter. The Dodgers didn't look comfortable defensively. I mean, good God, Fenway Park has a garage door in center. You're telling all these guys in L.A., National League guys who never play there, yeah, there's this ballpark. There's a monster in left and a garage door in center, huh? They didn't look comfortable. They didn't manage comfortable. In fact, the only two guys that actually hit, one of them was Manny Machado. The other is David Freese. Not coincidentally, guys who had played and hit at Fenway Park before. There was a moment in the seventh inning, Jock Peterson came in, and this always happens. Whenever you substitute a guy in, the ball finds him immediately, right? So Jock Peterson comes in, Joe Buck with a call. Listen.
Pops it up, left side, long run. Peterson just into the game. Can't make the play. It's a double. The ball usually finds the new guy. And on a cold night, Jock Peterson could not get there.
I mean, he didn't know where the bathrooms were. He didn't know where the cafe was. He was just dealing with the IT guy. You ever gone to summer camp? Joy, did you go to summer camp? I went to summer camp as a kid.
Did.
The first 2 days are chaos. All these kids, all these counselors. How do I get to the lake? What events do I got to be part of? It's chaos. And you're just in a first day of summer camp fog. First day at work fog. Dodgers looked so uncomfortable last night. And by the way, Fenway Park, I've been to it, is so quirky and so unique from every other park in Major League Baseball. Forget the garage door in center. The fans are right on top of you. In Los Angeles, fans are more casual and they show up in the second inning. At Fenway, they show up at batting practice, and they're right on top of you. It looked dark. It looked cold. It looked wet. It was windy. This was the classic example, and you've seen this before. A warm weather team in the NFL goes to a cold weather site, or sometimes the cold weather Bears go down to warm weather Miami and just melt. The Dodgers looked out of sorts all night. I didn't love a managerial move, pitching move. I'll get to that in a little bit. But this is not a shock. That is the quirkiest. Home field advantage doesn't generally mean a ton in baseball. It's basically, if you got your ace going, you quiet the crowd. But Fenway Park's one of those rare spots. Fans on you, weather in October, totally loud and intense, with all these quirks, nooks and crannies. Dodgers need to show up early for batting practice, take more infield, because that game, they even got a break last night, and they just didn't look right at all. At all. And by the way, the National League Series they just came out of was a chess match. Analytically driven. Boston's a totally different team. Boston's like, here's our 9 guys. They're really good. Better than yours. Beat us. This is not going to be a fight like against Mayweather where it's jab, jab, move, jab. No, this is Tyson in his prime. They're coming after you. The hyper-aggressive Red Sox put their 9 guys out there, and they just come after you. And not that they don't like analytics, but it's not the Brewers. It's not multiple trips to the mound. They're going to put out their same guys. The Dodgers went analytics with their lineup yesterday, outthought the room, and looked absolutely like they were in the wrong place, at least last night. All right, I want to shift to this, and I'm going to get back to some of that in a second. But and I got a couple of stories on Amari Cooper. Troy Aikman doesn't like to move necessarily for the Cowboys, but let me go to the NBA quick. So there was a fight in the NBA Saturday night, Rockets-Lakers, and Chris Paul was in the middle of it. He plays for the Rockets, and Rondo was in the middle of it. And Rondo plays with LeBron James. And you can, like I said, you can blame whoever you want. Looks like Rondo spits. And Rondo got more game suspension than Chris Paul did, and Rondo fired back yesterday. He really fired back. By the way, fired back at LeBron's best friend. He said, everybody wants to believe Chris Paul's a good guy. They don't know he's a horrible teammate. They don't know how he treats people. I was going to let it rest, but I have kids, and I teach my kids to speak up for themselves. And, don't let the world tell your story. Well, I would never bring up an athlete's kids, but since Rondo brought up his kids, let me ask him this. Do you also tell your kids, if you've been difficult, every place you work, you get a reputation, and you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt here? Tell your kids that. That's also part of the story here, since you brought him up. The bottom line is Chris Paul is demanding. I've worked with a lot of demanding people. You can work with demanding people. I'm demanding. I've worked briefly with difficult people, and they're gasoline on any fire. They're instigators, la provocateurs. They're trying to start trouble. All you need to know about Chris Paul is the Pelicans and the Clippers got worse when he left, and the Rockets got better when he arrived, and he's always gotten along with his coaches. Doc Rivers and Chris Paul, the reputation was players resented how well they got along. That Doc Rivers and Chris Paul were too close. Rondo can't get along with anybody. Rondo couldn't get along with Doc Rivers. He couldn't get him out of Boston fast enough. He couldn't get along with Rick Carlisle in Dallas. Rick Carlisle, I covered in Portland. Maybe the nicest guy I've ever met in pro sports. Rick Carlisle's the nicest guy in the NBA. Everybody loves Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle could not get Rondo out of town fast enough. So there's a big difference between demanding. Chris Paul's demanding. He was demanding, Blake Griffin, hit your free throws. Learn to hit a three, Blake Griffin. DeAndre Jordan, be in the right place at the right time. That's demanding. That is demand. By the way, Blake had a nice night last night, but he's disappeared without Chris Paul. So is DeAndre Jordan. Okay, demanding. I've worked with demanding people. I'm all for it. Difficult people are impossible. And so if you're going to bring up your kids about rules, and I would never bring up your kids, but it should also be noted that you should tell your kids that life's a resume based on choices. Rondo's not going to get the benefit of the doubt in this fight. He's not going to get the benefit. He's not as good as Chris Paul. Chris Paul has multiple examples where he's left teams they've gotten worse, entered a team they got better. I mean, New Orleans was garbage. Chris Paul ends up in New Orleans. They have their best years. Leaves, they go into the tank. Clippers were embarrassing for years. Goes to Los Angeles. Clippers aren't embarrassing. Beat the crosstown Lakers. Rockets were kind of like plateaued. Oh, he goes over to James Harden. It won't work. Oh, it does. He even got along with James Harden, who's a guard who shoots a lot. You can say what you want about Chris Paul, but he's worked with Doc Rivers. He worked in New Orleans. He's working with D'Antoni. Tell me who Rondo's worked with. I mean, tell me. Nobody. That's not demanding. That's difficult. And by the way, LeBron and Chris Paul are best friends. And you just threw LeBron's best friend under the bus. Yeah, not good. That relationship, I guarantee you, is going to be strained from this point forward. I mean, LeBron won't say it, but this is why 6 teams, 5 years. Chris Paul's not been on 6 teams in 5 years. Chris Paul was in New Orleans doing a great job. And then they tried to trade him to the Lakers, and the NBA said, no, he's too good. That's not unfair. So he ends up with the Clippers. He stayed with the Clippers for years and years and years and years. And then finally, he got tired of the Clippers' dysfunction and went to Houston, and he'll end his career in Houston. 3 stops in the NBA is no biggie. 6 teams, 5 years, that's a you problem. That's on you. 6 teams, 5 years is on you. So whoever started the fight, Rondo can't come out and throw arrows and sling arrows at Chris Paul. Chris Paul's got a lot more friends in this league than Rondo does. He's a better player than Rondo is, and that goes without saying. Joy, I've said this before. I understand analytics. I am for some analytics.
But you like man-alytics also.
But I don't want to turn on the TV and watch nerds. Okay, I like man-alytics. Now, I don't care if it's a 50-50 split. And I do believe, especially in a big volume sport like baseball, that there are certain things over time that work well, that don't necessarily work well situationally in October. John Smoltz will be on in a couple hours. He and I agree on that. But there was a moment last night for the Dodgers. I totally disagree. They want analytics over manalytics, and I absolutely hated it. And Troy Aikman doesn't hate it, but he said he's nervous about this Amari Cooper move. That's coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
By the way, Fenway Park tonight will be a zoo because now they've got a lead in the series. They smell blood in the water. Fenway Park is going to be so inhospitable tonight for the Dodgers. It'll be the craziest crowd of the year in Major League Baseball. The West Coast Dodgers down 0-1, facing David Price. By the way, Manny Machado has done very well, has owned David Price through the years. But the righties for the Red Sox now are hot, and I think Dodgers throwing a lefty tonight. Good luck. I want to say this, though. I've said this before. Baseball managers in 2018 with analytics don't do much. That's why the Yankees, Red Sox managers combined don't make as much as the Boise State football coach. And I'm not joking. The Boise State football coach, coaching 12 games a year in that conference, makes more than Alex Cora and Aaron Boone combined. That's all you need to know about baseball managers. They're not going to pay them any money. They don't do that much. But what they do that we all see is go to the bullpen. They walk out to the mound, they go to the bullpen, and we see it. It's right there. That's a big decision by the manager. Ooh, he made the call to pull out. So last night, it's not that I'm anti-analytics, but some stuff works on a volume level, on a scale level, but it doesn't necessarily work in October. And Dave Roberts in the 7th inning takes out Pedro Baez, who has been on fire, was terrible early, been on fire for a month. He just blew the ball past two guys. Okay? And Dave Roberts is in his binder. Well, I want to get the lefty-lefty matchup. Dave Roberts goes tactical over practical. And he brings in Alex Wood. Well, I like the matchup and the numbers say, dude, Pedro Baez blowing the ball past people, a man who's pitching the best of his career. He's been on fire for a month, and he's got a hitter. It's not one of the Red Sox best hitters coming up, and you pull him because the binder. I got to look down at the binder, and Joe Buck with a call.
And Nunez, a good bad ball hitter off of left-handers. That is hammered into left. It is gone. Pinch hit 3-run home run. Nunez. And the Red Sox open up game one.
And John Smoltz, this is driving him crazy. A-Rod, this is driving him crazy. A-Rod talked about this again last night. Alex Rodriguez.
I'm flabbergasted by that move. And look, we always talk about a point guard. In order to be good, you have to see the floor. A manager has to do the same thing. What metric are they previewed that you take out Baez, who's dominating, faces two hitters, strikes them both out? It doesn't make any sense to you. Scripted baseball does not work in October. It could work during the season. Scripted baseball does not work in October.
Yeah, there's a big difference between 162 games and the pressure of an October game in Fenway Park. Don't overthink the room in situations. You got a man who's blown it by people, who's never had more confidence. He's had a great month. You keep him in and let him just... Listen, man, you see this in sports all the time, where a great player in baseball, A-Rod, gets into a funk and loses his confidence. We've seen LeBron James multiple times lose. You saw Joey in Miami lose confidence in his jumper. When you get pro athletes and they feel great about themselves and they got the chest puffed out and they're doing it, just let them go. Man, it's hard enough to be a visiting team from a warm weather situation to play in that stadium this time of the year, and you got a guy that feels great about himself and you're going to a binder. And by the way, last year in Game 7 of the World Series, Charlie Morton's a pitcher for the Astros, a starter, and they put him in the bullpen. He goes the last 4 innings of the game. Well, where are the analytics on that? There are no analytics that say, use Charlie Morton, a starter. No, they brought in a man, Justin Verlander, a world-class Hall of Fame starter, come out of the bullpen. You go with Manalytics in these big spots. I trust Charlie Morton. I trust Justin Verlander. This idea that you can use all these analytics, pocket protector stuff, it works for a lot of games. But when you get to the Western Conference Finals and it's Kevin Durant and you got, LeBron against him, throw that crap out. These are the 2 alphas in the league. Let them roll. Who's hot? And I think Dave Roberts last night, I think he did himself a huge disservice. I think the Dodgers front office, and that's the kind of stuff in baseball now. We don't see managers do much. The pitching change, we see them do it, and when it doesn't go well, it just sticks out. It's just a flashing red light. Not a good look. And Smoltz and A-Rod both called this puppy. Joy with the news.
No.
Turn on the news.
This is the Herd Line News.
So, Pat Shurmur said yesterday that he expects Eli Manning to remain the Giants quarterback after the trade deadline. I don't know why that's shocking, but naturally this led to Eli being asked about it.
I haven't thought about the trade scenario. This organization is the only team I've ever played for, and the only thing I know. And I love the New York Giants. I can't. It's hard to imagine being with another organization.
Yeah, it sounds like Eli is kind of going to make it really difficult. I mean, you say that, and it's. Although I think at this point, can you go to that emotional well if you're Eli again? Can you go to the well, or are people like, dude, you can? Last year, it was the puppy dog face, Eli Manning,
Right.
And everybody was like, hey, you're picking, but now you're 1-6. It's time to rip the Band-Aid off.
Well, because last year it was mostly put on coaching. For why, like Eli wasn't playing well, but there was a lot of pressure on McAdoo to get it together.
Yeah.
So there was kind of a built-in excuse there. I don't understand this trade scenario. Where did this come from? Who's trading for Eli Manning?
No, what they're doing is tanking. The Giants are actually, and the Raiders are trading away good players. That's called tanking in the NFL. Because in the NFL, you have to play hard every week or you get hurt. The way to tank is what the Raiders are doing. Khalil Mack, have him. Amari Cooper. And then you lose a bunch of games, get a top pick, and you go get a new quarterback. The Giants, essentially, by trading Snacks Harrison is really good. And by moving Eli Apple, what you're saying is we're giving up on this season, and we want to have a top 3 draft pick and get a quarterback.
Also, Manning has a no-trade clause in his contract, so
yeah,
it's really up to him. So John Gruden's second stint as head coach of the Raiders is off to a rough start, as you just mentioned, and now it sounds like he's quickly lost the trust of many of his players.
Ooh.
According to Vic Tafur of The Athletic, he said, quote, many of the players I've talked to question the coach's accountability. It was the way the trades were handled that is bothering veteran players. When what you say and what you do are 2 different things, there's a problem. One player who requested anonymity said. I've never, ever, ever understood why organizations feel the need to tell the team that nobody's getting traded or moved. I don't understand the purpose of it. I never will. You back yourself into a corner. You're almost guaranteed to have to then break your promise, a promise that you do not have to make because you are in the decision-making seat and it's a business. You don't have to promise anyone that they're not being moved. It's nonsense.
The other thing is you can tell players a lot of things, but players know the truth.
Right.
And I've talked to NFL guys. I've talked to NBA guys. Players know who can really play. Okay, when you trade Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper, 2 of the top 3 players in that locker room, you can tell the players all you want, it's for the future. But the players are like, those are our best players. You can't BS players on who can play and who can't. And the team has no pass rush. Wow. Khalil Mack. And I that's why I always said, even though Khalil Mack was expensive, he would have been 10% of your cap. Okay, and then your quarterback's 10 to 12% of your cap. Okay, I can have 22% of my cap on the 2 best players on the team, and they're both in key positions in their prime.
Right.
I think that Khalil Mack move, forget Amari Cooper, that move resonated so negatively amongst players that now you're just seeing the repercussions of it.
Yeah, you can't. I understand when a new coach comes in or a new GM comes in, you want to establish a culture and put your imprint on things, and you want to move certain players out.
I get that.
Your style, all of that. But communication is huge, and you can't go and trade Khalil Mack and then talk about you need a pass rusher. Like, it just doesn't even make any sense. And everything that you're saying about players is true. Not only do they know who can play, players talk to other players. Like, if you go out publicly and say that something went down one way, all they have to do is pick up the phone and call someone, and they'll get the other side. And they're more than likely going to side with the player because they've spent time with them. They don't know you.
Right.
So the entire culture in the locker room is lost. Like, what you're trying to establish is then going to fall on deaf ears because you're not going to get rid of all the veteran players in the locker room. Mm-hmm. It's just a weird approach. And the whole idea of coming in and saying that nothing is going to change and no one's going to be moved, you don't owe that to anyone. Nor do players expect to hear that. I don't get it.
Say less as a coach.
Exactly.
Always
Have whatever your goal is, be clear. But all the business stuff does not need to be discussed.
Football coaches rule.
Exactly.
Talk as little as possible.
Finally, the fallout of the Chris Paul, Rajon Rondo saga continues, especially after Rondo's comments about Paul yesterday. Him saying that he was a bad teammate. And now players and former players are taking sides, including Glenn Davis. He posted this comment on Instagram yesterday. Big Baby said, I played with both of them. CP3 is a very bad
but again,
teammate.
Who's Glenn Davis? Glenn Davis has got all his issues too. Glenn, I like Glenn, but Baby Davis got all his issues too. So Baby Davis is one of the 5 guys in the league that's been trouble. Rondo's been one of the 5 guys. You know, you always say this. Who supports winners? Who supports losers? Rondo is getting now supported by another guy that didn't like Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers didn't like Rondo. Doc Rivers didn't like...
Fair.
There you go.
That's very public. I don't know how I feel about the bad teammate thing. I think you can probably, for most people, find someone to say something negative about anyone. Like, very rarely are you going to find someone that everyone loves, because everyone doesn't love everybody. So the teammate thing, I don't really care about so much because it's more about results. You know, some people may say that Michael Jordan wasn't the best teammate at times.
Exactly.
Okay, but he got results. So that stuff I don't care about as much. I think that there's a lot more to this Rondo-Chris Paul beef than just what happened on Friday night. I think it runs a whole lot deeper than that. And I don't think it's over, actually, because they're going to play more and they may meet in the playoffs. And this has just created what turned out to be kind of a good thing for the NBA. Is a little bit of a rivalry now. Yeah. So
fights are never terrible for the league. People think they are.
No.
But intensity and passion, early NBA, it's not bad for the league.
No.
Enjoy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Live
News. I said yesterday, the Dallas Cowboys traded a first-round pick to get Amari Cooper. And I said, I would have preferred a third-round pick or a second-round pick. But don't freak out over a first-round pick. I'll give you a stat that I don't know how many people know this, but when Seattle had that 3 to 4 year dynasty thing going, when Seattle was loaded from 2013 to 2016, and they had the best roster in the NFL. Do you know in 2013, the Seahawks didn't have a first-round pick? And in 2014, they didn't have a first-round pick. And in 2015, they didn't have a first-round pick, and they had the best roster. You can live without first-round picks. I should tell you last year, the L.A. Rams did not have a first-round pick. And the L.A. Rams didn't have a second-round pick last year. And the New England Patriots drafted 9 players this year. 6 haven't played, and 1's hurt. And by the way, New England in 2016 and 2017, Joy, didn't have a first-round pick. So Troy Aikman says, I don't know if I like the move. Dallas radio, here it is.
I'm a little skeptical, but you hope that it works, and you hope that maybe Amari Cooper is the answer. But I think there's just more to it than what I've seen from just the wide receiver. They're trying to do something, and I guess you can applaud him for that. But a first-round pick for him, I'd be a little nervous about that one.
Okay, Philadelphia, by the way, didn't have a first-round pick. Kansas City this year did not have a first-round pick. Rams, again, didn't have a first or a second-round pick. Okay, draft picks are important. But 30% of the guys in the first round can't play or get hurt or underachieve. Know that. Amari Cooper can play. So let's just do worst case scenario here. Worst case scenario, he breaks his leg tomorrow. But let's go reasonable worst case scenario. He comes in, You're stuck with him this year and next year with a contract, right? Because the Raiders extended it. So you're going to pay him about $13 million this year, maybe a little bit more next year. Okay, so he averages like $14.5 million for the next 2 years, and he gives you like 30 catches a year and 2 touchdowns. And so in 2 years, you get like 60, 70 catches and a few touchdowns, a couple. Okay, well, it's 2018. Couldn't the Dallas Cowboys use that from a wide receiver? Are you going to tell me worst case scenario, he gives you in 2 years, let's just worst case it, 60 catches. That's like 2 catches a game. He's going to get more than that because they're going to try to get the ball to him. But he gets 2 catches a game. And he's got a 60 catch. And by the way, he gets in the end zone like 3 times, which is he's going to get in the end zone more than that. Okay, so they could still use that production. And by the way, then after next year, you let him walk, and it frees up money. And oh, by the way, you gave up 1 pick, which, by the way, the pick you were going to use for a wide receiver anyway. Have you looked at the last 4 years' first-round wide receiver picks? I mean, they're almost all busts. So let's say it's worse. You know, in business, when you invest in something, you know, when I bet a football game, worst case scenario, I lose my money. I don't bet a football game if I need that $75. So when you bet, anytime you bet on sports, just say, I'm going to lose. And if the worst case scenario is I can't pay my cable bill, then don't bet. Okay, just always think about worst case scenario. If you buy a business, if you give up a draft pick, if you acquire somebody at your law firm, worst case scenario. Can you handle worst case scenario? Because, you know, best case scenario is easy. Oh, Amari Cooper gets 70 catches a year. That's easy. But let's say it doesn't work and you pay him $14 million a year and on average next 2 years and you get 30 catches and 1 touchdown. All right, well, you could still use that production. I mean, Dallas needs more than anything a wide receiver. They got their linebackers. They got their defensive line. They got their offensive line. They got their star running back. And they have for the next year and a half their quarterback. And so they got that. But they could use a safety. They could use a safety. But it is an NFL offensive league now, right? What they really need is a wide receiver. Worst case scenario, he's not worth a first-round pick. All right. And you let him walk and you free up money. He did give you some production. I mean, unless he breaks a leg, the worst case scenario, he's just not worth the pick. And then you lost a pick, which you would have used on a wide receiver. In the last 4 drafts, wide receivers taken in the first round is a list of who's who. I mean, I don't know, half these guys are even in the league still. So I think, and just remember, really good teams in this league give up first-round picks all the time. Seattle in their dynasty didn't have a first-round pick for 3 years. In fact, one of those first-round picks they gave up for Percy Harvin, who virtually never played. And they still were a dynasty. That didn't unravel their dynasty. What unraveled their dynasty was Richard Sherman got hurt. They went a little political. They started yapping in the locker room. The offensive line kind of deteriorated. It wasn't about the first-round picks. By the way, Pete Carroll whiffed on a couple of first-round picks. He was always good with 4th, 5th, and 6th-round guys. He was good with third-round guys, Russell Wilson. Pete Carroll's never been like nailing first-round pick guy. Even his running back pick this year, first round, everybody's like, he kind of overdrafted that guy. So when I think of a business, I think of worst case scenario. And worst case scenario for Amari Cooper, he's completely mediocre. Well, you could still use the production and let him go in a year and a half and you free up money. I don't think that, if that's the worst case scenario, that's a good worst case scenario. Rob Parker's around the corner. He's got some thoughts on the World Series. He's a Hall of Fame voter in Major League Baseball. Rob Parker, more than the NBA, more than the NFL, loves baseball. He's got some thoughts on that. He's got some thoughts on Chris Paul and Rondo. We got people, Big Baby Davis is siding up now with Rondo. I think that's more of an indictment than it is good news for Rondo. All that coming up, plus the winner in this Rondo-Chris Paul fight. It's not LeBron, but there's a winner here. That's coming up. Got so much good stuff today. Albert Breer next hour. Joel Klatt next hour. Let's bring in a guy. He's like our Rondo, Joy. He's our instigator. He doesn't spit on people, though. He is very difficult, except on our show. He is Rob Parker, USC, teaching sports commentary, Detroit News, New York Daily News. You're a baseball guy through and through. You have a Hall of Fame vote.
Yes, and my first World Series I ever covered, you ready? 1986 Mets Red Sox, which was a classic.
Oh,
7
God.
game. That was my first. I was 22 years old. My first World Series I ever covered.
You were getting paid for it.
Yes.
Wow.
Paid big time by the
So you're
Daily
a kid
News
from
in
the
New York.
Queens. You're from Queens.
I'm from Queens.
And you got to cover a Mets World Series.
Can you believe that?
That's incredible.
22 years old. I'll never forget it.
Okay, so you're a big baseball guy, and you and I talk off air a lot. When I have a baseball question, I'm always asking Rob about questions. Now, I've said before, I do like analytics to a point. I had lunch with Daryl Morey, Houston Rockets GM, the other day. He was laughing. He goes, I like your analytics. And I said, I like them. But these are men in their 20s. They've got egos. And in pro sports, when you get into the postseason and a guy's hot, let him be hot. So last night, Pedro Baez, who's been hot for a month for the Dodgers, who just blew through 2 Red Sox, gets pulled for Alex Wood. You're a baseball guy.
I hated it. And I'm talking about first guess, not a second guess after he gives up the home run. I just didn't like it. I'm with you on this. I get the analytics. You have the numbers. Sometimes you can look at matchups. I get all that. But sometimes there has to be a feel for the game. And you look at Pedro Baez and you say, he's throwing the lights out of the ball. He is pitching great.
And he's really hot for them right now.
Absolutely. And I don't think Nunez, and I know he went down and got an ugly pitch and pulled it over the Green Monster and all that. It wasn't like a meatball by Alex Wood, so I get that. But still, it shouldn't be always about who's coming up to bat, but what pitcher you want on the mound.
In the moment.
In the moment, exactly.
Last year, Verlander and Charlie Morton of the Astros, where in analytics does it tell you, take a starter, put him in the bullpen? But Charlie Morton was hot, had a ton of confidence, last 4 innings, wins the series. I mean, to me, here's the other thing, is that if analytics in baseball are so special, then why aren't the Cleveland Indians and why aren't the Oakland A's winning more?
See, I love that because I know everybody, Billy Beane, analytics, the A's, I know they've made it to the playoffs with some low payrolls or whatever, but they haven't won anything. They made a movie about winning 20 games in a row, but they never mentioned the 3 stud pitchers they had on the top of that rotation.
Okay, so by the way, the Cubs are into analytics, and so are the Dodgers, and so are the Red Sox, and so are the Yankees, by the way. But what gets them over the A's is stars.
Yes.
So you need players. And Bryce Harper now, because of defensive shifts, may hit 209. But I hate the defensive shift. See, I would argue I'd still like Bryce Harper in a big spot. John Smoltz always says this. In the playoffs, there's a lot of pressure. Put the ball in play. You just don't know. Some guys can hit shots in the NBA Finals, and some guy, Andy Dalton in the NFL, shrinks in big games. The analytics tell you he's a B-plus quarterback. In big games, Andy Dalton's a C-minus quarterback. Do you think analytics, I don't necessarily think they're great for the viewer.
No, I don't think so as well. I still think it's still those moments and matchups where you want to see certain players, and I still would rather see a certain guy up who's on a hot streak or whatever, rather than just going totally by the book and saying, well, he's got a higher batting average than this guy. That doesn't mean you're going to get the big hit in that big moment or get the out because you have a better career mark against that player. So I get analytics to a certain degree, but I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's taken away something from baseball, and I think fans are watching going, why are they making these moves? And even, Dave Roberts, I think he overmanages. I mean, he's in an American League ballpark with a DH and going through his whole roster last night. Why are you making all these switches?
So you don't have any pinch hitters at the end of the game.
Yes, I don't get that. Why are you doing it?
By the way, I want to shift to a couple of topics here. This is an interesting thing. So Rondo has been difficult his whole career. I would argue Chris Paul's been demanding, but Chris Paul got along with Doc Rivers. Chris Paul gets along with Mike D'Antoni. Rondo couldn't get along with Rick Carlisle, who may be the nicest guy in the league.
I know Rick from Detroit when he was a head coach there.
Rick is one. I covered him in Portland. If you can't get along with Rick Carlisle, you can't get along with anybody. So on this fight, yesterday, Rondo comes out and calls out Chris Paul, and my takeaway is, dude, come on now. There's a reason you're on your 6th team in 5 years. And I also wonder this. Chris Paul's LeBron's best friend. Was this a bad move by Rondo to call him basically a lousy teammate?
Yeah, it's a good question. And as we go forward and when he comes back, this will be an interesting thing to look at because that's really a good observation see where, because of course LeBron was what? Comforting or moving Chris Paul to the side during that melee.
Did you notice that?
Yep.
By the way, think about this. So what kind of personality? Because LeBron can make anything work. LeBron and Wade didn't work perfectly, but they liked each other and they made it work. And LeBron and Bosh didn't work perfectly. LeBron and Love didn't work perfectly, but LeBron liked them, so it worked. We know that LeBron and Lonzo both need the ball. It's not a perfect fit. Let me ask you this, though. LeBron can make anything work. Rondo is intense and difficult. Lonzo's the opposite personality. Chill, laid back.
Sometimes too laid back.
That's right. The criticism's a very good point, Rob. The criticism of Lonzo, he's too chill. But if the intense guy at work wears you out, you tend to go the opposite direction. This Rondo fight, is it potentially helping Lonzo? The chilled, laid back. LeBron's like, dude, I can't take Rondo. He's calling out my best friend. He's too intense. I'm going to go the opposite, go with chill, laid back Lonzo.
This is a big moment right here, I think, Colin, from the standpoint of if Lonzo continues to play, and he's played well, right? Continues to play well.
7 threes.
And make those open threes when the ball comes. Now, if he was clanking them, it would be a big, different situation where they couldn't have him in there if he's not knocking them down. He's knocking them down, and he's taking them with nobody in front of him, right? They still don't respect him, so he has open looks. If you're the Lakers and you're really serious about what is this year, is this really you can't win, you know you can't win, and you're trying to see who you're going to hold on to and how you're going to move forward.
It's an audition year.
It's an audition year, so you know what? Lonzo Ball should be playing, not a one-year journeyman who's been around. We know what Rondo can do. We know that he's important if you get to the playoffs. We've seen the playoff Rondo and the regular season Rondo.
Right.
And they are different players.
Oh, totally.
Okay? So I get that. But if you're the Lakers, you got to take a look at Lonzo to see really, A, can he play with LeBron? Is he as advertised before he got drafted? Is he really that guy? Or is he a bust? Is he not going to be that guy? And I think that they need to look, and now with Rondo being suspended, and if they can get a win or two and Lonzo looks good, maybe you decide, let's keep it this way and bring Rondo off the bench.
Now, this is a good point. What you're saying is this really is the year of discovery, the year of auditioning. So why would you play Rondo?
It doesn't make any sense, to be honest.
We know what Rondo is. There is television game Rondo, playoff Rondo, and regular season Rondo. Lonzo's the one we're trying to figure out, A, can he play? And B, can he fit with LeBron? So why not just play him?
And I'll tell you this. The Lakers are teetering, and these first 10, 13 games, Colin, are very critical. I know people are, they'll be fine. That sounds good. But the difference between being one of the top 4 seeds and the lower 4 is that if they finish in the lower 4, they can get a first-round series against Golden State or the Rockets and be on the road and get knocked out. I don't think that's what they're looking for, to be knocked out in the first round. So if you fall into a 3-10 hole or something like that, and it is doable. Look at that schedule.
Oh, no, Rob.
If they don't beat the Suns tonight.
Watch it. Listen, we'll talk about this later in the show. People don't understand this. Is that, like I said, give it 30 games. I always felt give me trading deadline. If they lose to Phoenix tonight, okay, they're going to be an underdog in 6 of the next 7 games. Here's an interesting point. And you and I we talk about interesting. I mean, today we talked about the World Series and the LeBron.
Right.
If they're 3-12, if you look at their schedule, are they a topic in all these opinion shows? Even with LeBron and the Lakers. The Dallas Cowboys, when Tony Romo got hurt, remember that they couldn't pick up first downs? Shows like this didn't talk about it.
No.
I mean, LeBron's in danger of not even being a topic.
No, you know what? And it's not that far away. So that's why I'm saying they need to win some games like soon. And to be honest, they were in all 3 of those games that they lost, Colin. In fact, they should have won. That game that they gave
San Antonio,
to the Spurs
they should have won.
was a terrible loss. That was a terrible loss. They should have won that game. The Lakers are in trouble.
Dodgers win tonight?
They better win. I think they will win tonight. They need it really bad. They can't fall behind 0-2.
Well, David Price is not a good postseason pitcher, but he did have his last start was pretty good.
Yeah,
so
he's the one who got them into the World Series. He won that game.
Yeah, and by the way, Machado hits David Price Machado
with a 3-run bomb tonight for the Dodgers.
It's the Herd. Hour 2, live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, iHeartRadio, we're on Fox Sports Radio, and right here on FS1. Joy Taylor is joining me this hour. Albert Breer stops by, and Joel Klatt. We got all sorts of stuff going on. The World Series, Game 2 tonight on Fox. David Price goes for the Red Sox. They're favored in the series, and Fenway made the Dodgers look very uncomfortable last night. I want to get back to what was a big story yesterday on the show, Amari Cooper of the Raiders being traded to the Cowboys. And I'm hearing all these stories about, he's not worth a first rounder. He's going to be too expensive. So the latest story, Mike Florio says his contract, he's going to be getting almost $14 million next year. Oh, $14 million. That would be 7% of the cap. Who cares? Khalil Mack is a defensive player making $22.5 million, who never touches the ball unless it's a strip sack, and he's 11.5% of the Bears' cap. 11.5% for a defensive player in a sport where defensive players are continually handcuffed. By the way, Brandon Cooks of the Rams, he is their third most used wide receiver. Makes $16 million a year. He's 8% of their cap. Who cares?
Who cares how much of your cap you're spending on a position of need?
Well, this goes back to something else, and I've said this for years. There's always this feeling in football that during the draft, you just draft the best player available. Never need. I don't believe that, and here's why. If my wife said, could you go to the store, honey, and get milk and bread, and I came back with a rake, and I said it was the best value, and she said, we got a rake. Well, it's the best value. It was off 40%. I got a rake. She grabbed the rake and hit me over the head with it because she needed eggs and she needed milk and bread. This whole thing about just draft the best player available. Well, if the best player available is a quarterback and you have Drew Brees in his prime, you don't draft a quarterback. You sell the pick. This year, New England always says this. We just get the best player available. Really? This year, go look at who the Patriots drafted in the first round. It was not the best players available. They needed a running back because they lost Deion Lewis. They drafted a running back, and it was a left tackle, guard tackle, because they lost Nate Solder. They went to fill positions of need, running back and offensive lineman. Those were not the two best players. You can argue both. Most people said both were a reach, a little bit of a reach.
If you have key pieces like that,
you don't need.
Maybe you get the best player available. But if you need something,
go get.
Then you get that. How did that work out for the Giants this year?
Okay,
it's all anyone can talk about with the Giants.
If you think Jerry Jones is losing sleep on this, here's Jerry Jones. I'm going to read you a quote from Jerry Jones, owner of the Cowboys. Here's a quote he had years ago. He said, "When I look back on my life, I overpaid for my biggest successes every time. And when I tried to get a bargain, I ended up either getting it and not happy with it or missing it." Now think about this. In the 60s, this is a gambler, Jerry Jones. He borrowed $1 million in the 60s. $1 million was a lot in the 60s from Jimmy Hoffa's Teamster Union to buy some Shakey's Pizza chains. Some Shakey's Pizza was a big chain. It was the Pizza Hut of its time, right? He borrowed $1 million from Jimmy Hoffa's Teamsters. You think this is going to make him uncomfortable? By the way, when he bought the Dallas Cowboys, they were losing $1 million a month. Look it up. They are now the most valuable franchise in the world. When he built Jerry's World, do you know what the budget was for that? $650 million. Do you know what it cost him? $1.1 billion. It was double the cost, but Jerry kept saying, nope, I like this. Nope, I like that. Bigger scoreboard, better seats, nicer suites. And now that's the most valuable stadium in America. Okay. You think he's losing sleep because Amari Cooper could be 7% of the cap? Okay, let me just tell you how this works. It's an offensive league, right? We all admit it's an offensive league. If your quarterback is 11 to 12% of your cap, that's average. If your top running back is 7%, if Amari Cooper, your best receiver, 7%, and your left tackle's 5 to 6%, you know what that equals? 30%. That's not a third of your cap. In 2018 in the NFL, You don't think Thielen for Minnesota is not worth 6% of your cap, 7% of your cap, and you have Stephon Diggs? You've got a good... I don't think it's that big of a deal. Jerry is a risk taker, an oil maverick, and his biggest successes have been spending a little more than going bargain. Jerry tells you, when I look back, every success is overpaying in the moment. When I tried to get a bargain, when I jumped over a 20 to get to a 5, I either get it and don't like it, or I missed out on it. This is an aggressive guy. It's an aggressive brand. The great successes for the Cowboys have been with aggressive Jimmy Johnson. Remember Jimmy Johnson made that Herschel Walker trade? That was an aggressive move. Changed the franchise. Bill Parcells, aggressive.
Changed the NFL.
Changed the NFL. That was an aggressive move. At the time, people were like, what in God's name is Jimmy Joe? God's the greatest move of all time. Jerry was aggressive, bought a team, and by the way, cobbled together every nickel he had to buy the Cowboys. I mean, Jerry was not rolling in dough. He took a huge risk. Multiple loans to buy the Cow. Everything he's done, Jerry's world. $600 million? No, $1.1 billion. So they're not losing a second of sleep on this. All right, this is amazing. So the New York Giants have just traded defensive tackle Damon Harrison to the Detroit Lions. He's a very good player. Snacks Harrison. The Giants are essentially, they're giving up on the season. They gave up Eli Manning to the Saints for a couple of picks. Snacks Harrison goes to Detroit, giving up on the season. And they should at this point. They can't win, get draft picks, and get some players, right? And by the way, Pro Football Focus says the Lions have added the NFL's leader in defensive stops on the defensive interior in each of the past 3 seasons. Not Aaron Donald, this guy. So he's good. And we have a lot of trades happening now in the NFL. We still got a week to go and a lot of trades. So yesterday... Peter King was on the show, and we asked him, why suddenly now do we have all these trades going on in the NFL? Teams are more aggressive.
The young general managers and young coaches don't necessarily buy that you have to do it the way you used to do it. So the younger GMs and the younger people making the decisions are not necessarily married to their ancestors in the league. Plus, it always helps if you can make a trade up through week 8 in the NFL instead of through week 6.
So I like the move. It's aggressive. He's a good player. The Lions are like, hey, but I just want to point this out. Now think about this for a second. So Chicago got Khalil Mack, aggressive. And Minnesota went and paid Kirk Cousins. They won 13 games with Case Keenum. They went super aggressive and got Kirk Cousins. And Detroit here is being really aggressive. Who's not in the division? Green Bay. I want to give you Green Bay's schedule for the next 5 games. At the Rams, at the Patriots. Dolphins at home, not an easy one. At Seattle, at Minnesota. 1-4. The Bears got aggressive. The Lions just got aggressive. Minnesota was aggressive. We know that aggressive in sports is being rewarded. The Warriors had a title. Aggressively recruited KD. Rockets were good. Aggressively recruited Chris Paul. Red Sox, aggressively, J.D. Martinez. Dodgers, aggressively, Manny Machado. Just to rent, basically. Aggressive is winning in sports. Houston, Justin Verlander, aggressive. Okay. Green Bay Packers, once again, they could certainly use Snacks Harrison. Nah. Could have used Khalil Mack. Nah. Listen to this. This is incredible. So we all admit now that Aaron Rodgers is, great. Like probably the most talented quarterback. I think Brady's the best. Easily, but he's most talented. They are a 9.5-point underdog now to the LA Rams with Aaron Rodgers. Now, I want you to think about that. What is Vegas telling you about Green Bay? They don't have any players. Has Tom Brady ever been a 5-point underdog? I couldn't tell you the last time Tom Brady was a 4-point underdog, a feel underdog. Has Drew Brees, in the year the Saints were 7-9, 7-9, 7-9 with a bad defense, was Drew Brees ever a touchdown underdog? I mean, when Vegas is telling you, it's not like weather is going to be a factor. Sometimes, a warm weather team going into a blizzard, Vegas is like, no shot. This is a cold weather team with a California quarterback going out west. It's going to be 80 degrees, and they're giving him, Aaron Rodgers, 9.5 points. If Vegas... Okay, Baker Mayfield's going to Pittsburgh. He gets 8. I mean, so Baker Mayfield a puppy, a baby, a kid against the all-time Steelers, who are first or second in the league in sacks. Vegas is like, give Baker 8 points. They're giving Aaron 9.5. That is, I couldn't tell you the last time a Hall of Fame quarterback got 9.5. In 2018, maybe in 1980. But, I mean, think about this. Sam Darnold's a rookie. Nobody would dispute what I'm about to say. Offensive line, running backs, tight end, wide receivers. Jets are weak. Jets are bottom third in the league in all of those. They have a rookie quarterback. By the way, they're so beat up at wide receiver. They're bringing guys off the street right now. They just made a trade with Tennessee. They don't have any receivers. They're going to face the Bears in cold Chicago, and Sam Darnold's only a 7-point underdog. Vegas is like, give him a touchdown. Aaron gets 9.5. Well, I mean, if they're not telling you that Green Bay doesn't have any players, I don't know what else they have to say. I mean, that is, seriously, 9.5 is what the Buffalo Bills get on the road. And we're in an offensive era where quarterbacks have never been more valuable. So you've got the best one, arguably, and Vegas is like, yeah, this is like the Bills on the road with a rookie quarterback. Wow is all I can say. All right, packed today. Albert Breer's around the corner, some NFL news, and speaking of Vegas, Luke Walton's in trouble. We'll address that next, The Herd.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
The World Series continues tonight with Game 2 as Manny Machado and the Dodgers look to bounce back from a Game 1 loss. They take on Mookie Betts and the Red Sox at Fenway Park. It's all tonight at 7:30 Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
Fenway Park's going to be a zoo. They smell blood. West Coast soft finesse Dodgers. I think it's going to be a great game. Last night felt big. It really did. It felt big. Fenway Park, the crowd, it's on top of you. It's kind of dark and gloomy and wet, and the Dodgers looked uncomfortable. But it was a great game, one of the World Series. We got all sorts of stuff in the NFL. Let's go via the Cowherd Global Satellite Network to Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter at The Monday Morning Quarterback. It's great seeing you, Albert. Let's start with this on the Amari Cooper deal. What is John Gruden telling the football world, moving Mac, moving Amari Cooper? What's he telling us?
Colin, he's telling us about his roster. And he said this to me in August. He said what he found in January when he got there was gutted. They didn't feel like they were in a position to contend for a championship right now. And so I think we need to stop looking at the Raiders in the context of 2018 because they're looking at themselves in the context of 2020. And so if you can do that, then you start to look at Khalil Mack differently. You start to look at Amari Cooper differently. Logistically, they just weren't going to give Mack the guaranteed money that he wanted. And so by definition, he wasn't going to be there in 2020. And they liked Amari Cooper. They just don't like him at what he's going to cost in a year or two. He, of course, is going to cost $14 million on that option next year. And then you put him out on the free agent market before the 2020 season, and he's bound to make $16, $18 million just based on his draft position. You can see that in what Sammy Watkins got last offseason. And so I think that John Gruden arrived there feeling like the team needed to go through a full rebuild. And so when he looks at some players in his roster that have some trade value, and he says this guy probably isn't going to be here in a couple years, you can understand why that would motivate him to see what he can get for those guys, and clearly he got a lot of value for both of them.
Now, I think all of us believe we would like the Amari Cooper deal for Dallas for a third-rounder. We'd love it. For a second-rounder, we'd be more comfortable. But the Seahawks dynasty didn't have a first-round pick for 3 years right in the middle of it. The Rams didn't have a first or second this year. A lot of good teams, Kansas City, Philadelphia, didn't have first-round picks this year. You can win a lot of games if you feel that, like, for instance, the Cowboys. I don't think they have a ton of needs, but they have a huge need at wide receiver in the NFL in 2018. So I'm okay with a move. But Amari Cooper, there's a real divide here on he's not the player we thought. What do your sources and scouts say about him as a player?
Okay, so his character was clean coming out of Alabama. A hard worker, a program guy, all that different stuff. He gets to Oakland his first 2 years. There was a guy there named Bill Musgrave. He was his offensive coordinator in 2015 and 16. This guy is tough to play for, Colin, just like Nick Saban. And Amari Cooper, in that environment, produced. Bill Musgrave gets fired after 2016. What happens? Well, I think in that building in general, and this hit Derek Carr as well, There's a little bit of a substitute teacher effect on everyone there. And I think there were some problems with Amari Cooper's work habits. And the hope was with bringing in John Gruden that would change in 2018. And they have seen a little difference. It's just not consistent. And so the work habit issue existed there in 2017. It came back in 2018. It's been in and out a little bit. They've been in and out with his practice performance. And, of course, now you see the inconsistency in game action as a result. And so the hope here for Dallas is that the change of scenery is going to help him. They're very aware of all of this. They've got a guy in their building in Doug Nussmeier, who was his offensive coordinator at Alabama.
Yeah.
So they've got some good recon there on who he is as a person. He's not a bad guy. Nobody would ever tell you that Amari's a bad guy, but his work habits have been an issue over the course of the last 2 years. And the hope now in Dallas is that as a 24-year-old receiver, being traded will make the light turn on, and he'll go back to being the type of player that he was 2 years ago.
Let me throw this at you. The Bears were aggressive with Khalil Mack. The Lions are aggressive with Snacks Harrison. The Vikings were aggressive with Kirk Cousins. And here's Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, a 9.5-point dog to the Rams. Vegas is telling you they don't have good players. Do you think they'll make a move at the deadline? Are you surprised at their kind of passive nature as everybody in their division's going hyper-aggressive?
Well, I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, I think one thing you got to remember, there's been a point of frustration for Aaron Rodgers over the last few years. They didn't feel like they had been aggressive historically in bringing in veteran players. That was under Ted Thompson. Now they've got a new general manager in there, Brian Gutekunst, who came up in that system, but has, by reputation, a little bit more of an aggressive streak to him. And you see the way he moved up and down the draft board. Now, of course, they pick up the extra first-round pick for 2019. That's capital. They were very aggressive in moving up and down the draft board on draft day. And they did bring in some veteran players this year. They brought in Jimmy Graham. They brought in Muhammad Wilkerson. And so there was some aggression during the offseason. I would not rule out the Packers doing something between now and next Tuesday. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that organizationally, they're a lot more open to that sort of thing now that Brian Gutekunst is in charge. And again, maybe it doesn't manifest over the next week or so, but I think you will see it over the next couple of years and how the Packers operate as Aaron Rodgers moves into his late 30s.
I've been asking everybody that comes on the show about Le'Veon Bell. Could I make the argument they're going to get a superstar component to an already good offense with fresh legs, no miles on the tires, and it's all going to work out fine, and Connor will be a backup, and he is exactly what takes them over a Kansas City, over a New England, that in a weird way, this is all going to work out for the Steelers?
I think this has worked out for everybody. I mean, I honestly do. I mean, and look, we have to move the money part of it out, because I don't think it was smart for Le'Veon Bell to pass up money that's not going to be coming back. I don't think there's this huge pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for him either. But if you just want to look at it logistically now and what this looks like for the rest of the year, yeah, I mean, they know what James Conner is now. They probably wouldn't have this amount of volume of answers on what he is as a player if Le'Veon Bell had reported on time. And on the flip side, from Le'Veon Bell's standpoint, what's his concern been the last 2 months? His concern over the last 2 months was that he's going to put more mileage on his body, and at the running back position, that's a tough thing to do when you're playing for a contract. What happens now? Well, he steps back in there, and obviously they can use him in a million different ways, but they can also spell him. He can be part of a platoon. They know that James Conner can help them be a little bit more dangerous and vary their attack a little bit more. So Bell, I think, gets to save some miles on his body going forward, too, in addition to what he's already saved, because they know how to use Conner now. And, again, for the Steelers, I think this is adding another weapon to an already very good offense that's learned to play without him. So offensively, they're going to be great. The bigger questions for the Steelers, of course, Colin, are where they have been over the last 5 years, which is on the defensive side of the ball.
By the way, I'll just throw this at you. People are saying, ooh, the Eagles are interested. Well, wait a minute. The one thing the Eagles wouldn't have in a trade that the Steelers need is secondary help. And right now the Eagles have one guy they trust in the secondary. I don't buy the Eagle thing because what Pittsburgh does well is rush the passer. Okay, Philadelphia's got surplus of that, but nothing else defensively.
And I don't think that the running back position is a priority right now for the Eagles. Not to say that they might not pick up someone with a mid-round pick, but historically they don't value running backs at that level. They like depth, they like volume at running back, but they don't. Historically, again, they don't go all in on running backs. And internally, I'm just telling you, they do not view running back as their top need right now. Their biggest problems are at offensive tackle, which that is what it is. That those positions they've invested in Lane Johnson and Jason Peters. Those guys aren't performing to the level of their contract.
Yep.
Got some depth issues at receiver. The big place where I think they could make a move is in that secondary.
Yeah.
The other round, Ronald Darby, haven't played to the level they thought they would.
Yep.
And Rodney McLeod got hurt at safety. And so the Eagles are going to make a move. I know it's, Le'Veon Bell's like the shiny thing out there. The Eagles are going to make a move. I think it comes in the secondary.
This is why we bring him on. He's got great information, incredible contacts at MMQB, lead content guy, senior NFL reporter. Trust his words. He's always right. Albert Breer, good talking to you, bud.
All right, thanks, Colin.
By the way, Luke Walton's in trouble? I'll get to that in a second. Yikes. I don't buy that. He shouldn't be. Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Turn on the news.
This is the Herd Line News.
Speaking of coaches possibly being in trouble, Jason Garrett's job as head coach of the Cowboys is likely in jeopardy at this point. It's in conversation, although we don't really believe that Jerry's going to move on, but it is being talked about.
Okay.
So with that potential comes some names to replace him. BetDSI.com has revealed their odds of who will be coaching the Cowboys for the team's 2019 season opener.
BetDSI is legit.
Okay. So we have Josh McDaniels, Sean Payton, John DeFilippo, Jason Garrett, obviously, and George Edwards.
Would Sean Payton bail on Drew Brees?
No.
I don't think he would.
I don't even know why this is.
Now, Josh McDaniels is interesting, but I don't think he'd bail on Bob Kraft. He's helped his family. I don't buy those first two names.
I mean, look, there's only really being the Cowboys head coach should be one of the best, if not the best job in all of sports.
For coaches, yeah, it's good way up there.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, like the prestige, the organization, you have obviously the full support of an owner that's willing to spend any amount of money to make things happen.
Yeah.
But
that's a topic I'll do in a different day.
You're not going to have a lot of control.
Yeah. It sounds like a great job.
Right.
Like Alabama football, if Nick Saban retired tomorrow, you go, what a job. That's the worst job in the world. It's replacing Howard Stern.
No.
Like you do not want to replace Belichick in New England. That sounds
You don't want to replace the guy. You want to replace the guy who replaced the guy.
Yeah, so I don't think the Cowboys job, it sounds great, but I don't think it is.
It's like the next quarterback after Tom Brady retires.
Yeah, it'll pay a lot. Yeah, that it will.
Okay, so James Harden is already feeling the pressure of being the league's wins leader last year, and he also thinks that the Rockets are being targeted early this season. He told USA Today, obviously we haven't won a championship yet, but the way we've been playing, we have done pretty well. So whenever teams come to our home court or we are on the road, they get up for us, so we have got to be ready for that. They play harder. They play a lot more confidence. Now, they've had a kind of a bumpy start at the start of the season. They won one of their first 3 games.
Well, they've lost a couple of good players, and they added Melo. They got a little chemistry thing going on here too.
I'm not panicking about any team this far into the season.
If the Lakers lose to Phoenix, the season's over.
It is a very, very long season. You know what? You're joking, but people are going.
I know.
It's going to be the sky is falling. And listen, I didn't think that they were going to lose. And let's say they lose their first 4 games.
Joy, they should have beaten the Spurs. They had the Spurs beat.
The Spurs. They were in every single one of those games, and they should have beaten the Spurs.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
They should have beaten the Spurs.
That was a great game.
But it's a very, very long season. I think everyone's going to be okay. All right. I do agree. I don't know why the Rockets did all these aggressive moves, being that they were really a Chris Paul injury away from beating the Warriors, which at the beginning of the season no one thought was possible.
Yeah.
But I do think James Harden is right. People do get up for the Rockets. And
yes.
Obviously, we saw that.
And they get up,
Lakers.
by the way, they get up for him because there's a feeling in the NBA, right? I talked to a scout after the year was over. He goes, let me tell you something. Players are complaining about James Harden.
Oh, no, it's absolutely a thing. Chris Haynes said it yesterday.
Yeah.
Players are tired of it, coaches are tired of it, and executives are tired of not only the step back thing, just the way that he is officiated. People feel like it's almost like the quarterback in the NFL, where he's just protected. Offensive players are protected, and he specifically gets officiated differently than everyone else.
Used to be Shaq.
It's part of the reason why Brandon Ingram reacted the way that he did.
Yeah.
Because Harden gave him the extra shove and he overreacted. And finally, the Sixers and Pistons played a thriller in Detroit last night, which included a theatrical performance by Joel Embiid. In the closing seconds of the fourth quarter, Embiid made a layup to give Philly the lead and then had an amazing, amazing flop for the ages. There you go. So the refs hit Andre Drummond with his second technical foul in the play. He was automatically ejected, and Embiid felt like he'd throw a little extra mustard on it.
I'm pro flop.
I'm pro flop as well, actually. Yeah. And after the game, Embiid doubled down on the trolling with some trash talk and said he feels like he knows how to get under Drummond's skin.
All I was doing was just talking and playing basketball and, trying to win the game, man. Obviously on the second one, I think you could see that he hit me and his hand actually touched my face. So that's his problem, But like I said, I feel like I own a lot of real estate in his area.
He said it feels like he owns a lot of real estate in his head. Now, they lost 133-132 to the Pistons last night, so it didn't work out as far as the W goes. But Andre Drummond responded and said, LOL, does he? If that's so, he wouldn't be so excited to have me off the floor. I think about it, that's a silly statement. I'll take the W, though. Enjoy the flight home. # Emmy Award-winning actor. I just think flopping's part of the game.
Yep, so do I.
I mean, obviously, he's probably going to get fined because this is an insane flop.
Yeah.
And they want to take those kind of flops out of the game because that's obviously absurd. But I think selling fouls is part of it. Just like complaining about fouls you're not getting is part of it. Just like coaches throwing tantrums is part of it. It's all a psychological part of the game. Like, that's how it works.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Okay, according to Vegas, Luke Walton is the top betting odds for the first NBA coach to be fired over Tom Thibodeau and Fred Hoiberg and Billy Donovan and Scott Brooks and Terry Stotts and Tyronn Lue. Let me defend Luke Walton here. He's not the problem. When Luke Walton had stars in Golden State, remember that? Steve Kerr, back surgery, left. He went 39-4. That's a higher win percentage than Steve Kerr had that year. Number one. Number two is he won 35 games with the Lakers last year in the West with major injuries and babies. The veteran on the team last year was KCP, who, by the way, was on house arrest for a month. Westbrook, Melo, Steven Adams, Paul George won 48 games. Lakers won 35 in the West. How? I have no idea. I mean, it was like babies. Okay, Luke Walton's not the issue. And here's something I always look at. Do you make players better? Brad Stevens, to me, is the best coach in the NBA. Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, Avery Bradley play great with Brad Stevens. They leave Brad Stevens, they're not the same player. That tells you Brad Stevens is a good coach. By the way, Quinn Snyder's a great coach. Joe Ingles was a bounce-around guy from Australia. He averages 20 a game with Quinn Snyder. He's a 25-5 guy. Joe Ingles was just a bounce-around, cash a paycheck, 10-day contract guy. He gets into Quinn Snyder's system. He's a real threat. He's a 20-point-a-game guy. You better be guarding Joe Ingles. Okay, everybody that's played with Luke Walton gets better. Jordan Clarkson had people fooled for 3 years. People were like, Jordan Clarkson should be starting. He went to Cleveland, left Luke Walton. Now he's got one of the worst contracts in the league. Can't play. So I always look, do players get better with you? Are they their best with you? Brad Stevens, you can't even argue. I mean, Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, Avery Bradley, like everybody. Everybody's better. And the Joe Ingles in Utah, he's like a borderline all-star. There are nights that he's the most dangerous guy on the floor for either team. Okay? Players play good with everybody they give him. Kuzma, Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball. They all play well. All these babies. They're all better than we thought. And then, and Brandon Ingram. Everybody's getting better. Jordan Clarkson. By the way, people out here loved in L.A., loved Nance. He goes to Cleveland. He's a guy. And here, Luke is young. He played in the league. He's cerebral. LeBron likes thinkers. Remember, when LeBron went to Miami, he didn't know about Eric Spoelstra. Spoelstra was like Luke Walton. But D. Wade was like Duke and Coach. So D. Wade had Spoelstra's back, and then LeBron bought into him. Magic Johnson needs to have Luke's back. Luke's not the problem. Now, I thought he was overhyped when he got the job. Y'all made him out to be Phil Jackson. Luke's not the issue. He's young. He's not rigid. He is smart. He's a thinker. He gets personnel, and people get better. He's not perfect. But, I mean, folks, the fact they won 35 games last year and their veteran was KCP, I mean, drop the mic. Walk off the stage.
I think it's pretty obvious that Magic has Luke's back based off of the comments from LeVar and everything that happened last year.
Yes.
So it's pretty obvious that Luke is backed by the organization, but that was pre-LeBron James, and we know how LeBron has say over personnel. I think it's just ridiculous that Luke's job is even in question. Yeah. But the Lakers are not the type of organization to just fire a coach in the middle of the season. Oh, we couldn't figure it out before the season started.
They got issues. It's called lack of three-pointers. They need shooters. They don't need a new coach.
Exactly.
Joel Klatt's around the corner. We're going to have a toast. Get the champagne out. Joel Klatt, for the first time ever, and I will agree on something. We will share a toast with some get the bubbly. It's going to be a good day for Klatt and I. We may not be at each other's throats. That's coming up. Sleeping in Casper. Best mattress I've ever slept on. Casper.com. Code HERD. Get you $50 off. Select mattresses. Risk-free. 100 nights. Ship it for free. Don't like it, ship it out. Without a man that I argue with, it's contentiously on a regular basis. This week, we may actually have something in common. Let's bring in the voice of college football at Fox Sports and FS1, Joel Klatt. It's very exciting.
This is a very exciting day. What's up, man? Hi.
Hey, Joel.
How are you? Good.
We often disagree.
We do.
And there's a couple things on my sheet here we'll disagree with.
Okay.
But you and I should toast. And you don't have... Bring that over here. Come on over here. Let's toast.
Wait, what are we toasting to?
We were the only two guys in America right on Jim Harbaugh.
Hey, look at us.
Celebration.
Look at us.
This is like
It's
a
a celebration.
sweeping claim. Just not to ruin the cheers. but
Wait, why? Why are you ruining our cheers?
No one else was in on Jim
The
Harbaugh.
only two. These were the only two.
People have been
The
bailing
Go Blue
on
support club
Harbaugh.
was two people.
You don't think people have been bailing on Harbaugh? It's embarrassing. And by the way, he's got total control of the conference now.
Right now, I mean, listen, they haven't won the division. They haven't won the conference. But right now, they look to be the favorite with the struggles that Ohio State is having. Do you know that Ohio State has given up more plays of 30 or more yards than every team in college football except for two? Do you know who those two are?
Who?
Kent State and UConn.
Boy, Ohio State's a mess.
Yeah, it's interesting. And listen, the bye week comes at a good time for them after that loss to Purdue. But they struggle in the red zone offensively, and they really struggle giving up big plays, and all they can do is throw the ball. They can't run the ball. Watch out for Michigan.
Okay, listen. So I'm going to throw this out there. This is going to make Ohio State fans mad. Urban Meyer's history is this. He comes into your program, and he wins immediately.
And big.
And
Wins
then
big.
by the end of it, Florida, Ohio State, there are holes created.
Well, we don't know if this is the end. I mean, I wouldn't call it holes.
Kent State and Panera Bread, whoever that was, you're telling me you don't got a problem at Ohio State. By the way,
There's an
Harbaugh's
issue.
the opposite. Harbaugh does not come into your program and hit. He doesn't. It took him at Stanford 3 years to get it rolling.
Well, he took over a 1-11 team.
Well, by the way, Urban Meyer took over Bowling Green. Florida was a mess with Ron Zook. By the way, Ohio State was 6-7 with Luke Fickell. Urban comes in and hits home runs out of the chute. Harbaugh's a slow builder.
Well, I would disagree. Here's my only pushback is we haven't seen Harbaugh in a fifth year anywhere.
Well, fourth year.
Right? I mean, so this is what we're seeing right now is a new era of Harbaugh. I think he's going to be at Michigan for a while. Here's the thing I know about Michigan. They play great defense. They lead the country in total defense, lead the country in passing defense. They can get to the quarterback, even without Rashawn Gary on the field. And offensively, they're good enough. They run the ball really well with Karan Higdon. And if Jim Harbaugh, here's the Achilles heel for Michigan. If Jim and Pep Hamilton, who's kind of the pseudo-OC, if they just let Shea play a little bit more.
Yes.
He needs a little schoolyard in him. You know who he needs in him? Little Baker Mayfield. That's what
God.
he needs. That's what
That
he needs
guy
is
is
a little Baker
borderline
Mayfield.
trouble.
But meaning that they've got great threats down the field. Very similar to what Sam Ehlinger is doing at Texas. Allow your big threats down the field to win for you, to create big plays. If they allow Shea to do that, then they're going to be very dangerous. But right now, they are the best team in the Big Ten right now.
By the way, and that's all I'm saying, there's a lot. If you look at Ohio State, blown out by Iowa, blown out by Purdue, when Michigan's losing under Harbaugh, they are in these games to the last second. Ohio State has become, like once, twice a year, they don't show up.
It's alarming.
It is. There's no question it's alarming.
It's alarming. So here's a quick, you can say, and Dwayne Haskins is great, but for Ohio State fans, this is what you need to be concerned about. The 400 yards a game is great, and for the last 3 games, he's thrown for 400 yards. But Did you know that the 73 pass attempts last week against Purdue were an Ohio State record? Yes, you knew that. Art Schleicher had like 52. That was the previous record. Well, did you know that Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama has attempted 72 passes over his last 4 games? So Haskins throws 73 against Purdue, throws for over 400 yards. Seems like, yeah, a decent performance. Tua Tagovailoa has thrown 72 times in his last 4 games. Colin, guess what he's done in those 4 games?
Yeah.
1,033 yards and 13 touchdowns in 72 attempts.
What you're basically
It's
telling
dangerous.
me, Ohio State's getting gashed on defense and can't run the football.
That's the truth.
That's the opposite of Ohio State's brand. There's something wrong in Ohio State's program.
That's the truth. Now, they have a bye. We'll see if they can get it fixed. I think they've got good players. Their offensive line should be better. They've got running backs that should be better, J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber.
In 4 weeks, Jim
We'll
Harbaugh's
see.
going to say bye. Bye, Ohio State. I run the conference.
Here's the thing. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen it from Harbaugh. That's the only wait and see to our cheers. That's what Joy is waiting for her cheers, is if Ohio State can actually beat Michigan this year. You'll
Michigan,
come on, right? You're going to be like, see, guys, I told you. I
Told you about Ohio
to
State?
Michigan's winning that game.
I told you to pump the brakes on Jim Harbaugh.
No, I've never been out on Jim Harbaugh. I'm just saying that maybe there were a few more people in on Jim Harbaugh.
I thought it was only 2. Are you sure? I thought it was only 2.
I don't think anybody in the world.
I don't think anybody. And certainly, there was only 2, and one of them is got a book. So you know it's a good prediction.
Okay, so I'm looking at your top 10.
Okay.
And when does the BCS first come out?
It was 5 years ago, but the playoff ranking comes out Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday.
Yeah.
Next Tuesday.
Tuesday night.
Very exciting.
By the way, don't be surprised if LSU's number 2 in the playoff poll, but go ahead.
So I'm looking at your top 10. I got to be honest with you.
It looks pretty good. I know. Thank you.
No.
Oh.
Bama, Clemson, Notre Dame, I trust.
Okay.
Michigan.
You trust Michigan.
I don't love their offensive line. I don't. No. I think they're going to win the Big Ten.
They're running for over 200 yards a game. Giving up less than 1.5 sacks per game. But go ahead.
I don't know. When I watch them, something doesn't quite feel right in that spot. Everything else I love. Love the coach. I think Shea Patterson's a little Johnny Manziel. Love the defense. Good pressure. Receivers downfield. Offensive line.
Line's your question mark. I can buy that.
So, by the way, so you have Bama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan. I guess what I'm saying is the first 3 I totally trust. I kind of feel Michigan's closer to LSU and Texas. I don't quite.
Yeah, there's a gap.
There's a little gap with the 3 and the 4.
Well, let's be honest. The gap is between 1 and then everybody else. This feels a little bit like Tiger Woods in 2000 at Pebble Beach, winning by 12 or 15, whatever it was. And the tournament for second place that Ernie Els actually won was the incredible tournament that no one talks about. But I will say this. If there are 2 teams out there that I think are dangerous enough and actually could compete with Alabama, it would be Oklahoma and Clemson. Now, I've been saying Ohio State. That's clearly gone by the wayside. But Oklahoma is this interesting theory with Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They're not going to care if Tua is going off.
Because their guy goes off.
Because it's like, we see this all the time. Week in, week out, we're in like 50 to 49 shootouts. So is it really going to bother Oklahoma
by the way,
if Tua throws for 400 yards?
I'm so glad you brought up Oklahoma. Do you know what Oklahoma is averaging per game?
On what?
I'm
averaging what? I mean, can I get a category? Just averaging.
No.
Averaging what?
Well, what matters? Points. That's the way Herd household.
48.
Yeah, almost 49.
Sorry.
Last year with Baker Mayfield, they averaged 45. I'm just saying.
What's your point?
My point
How many
is,
wins did Cleveland have last year?
0.
Oh, how many wins do they have this year?
2.
Boom sauce!
How many do they have? They have 3. They got an overtime every week. I lose count. They got 2 or 3.
And they got a junk grab.
All I'm saying is Oklahoma, and everybody's going to get mad at me for saying this. What I'm going to say is facts, and I don't care.
Why are you taking this into the Mayfield?
No, I'm not. This isn't even about.
I don't want to beat you over the head with Mayfield again.
I'm going to say this. Lincoln Riley's at Eastern Illinois.
Eastern Illinois? What do you mean? East Carolina?
Let's keep East Carolina.
Okay.
And the quarterbacks are amazing. And Baker
Shane
Mayfield's
Carden,
amazing. Yep. And then I'm watching this little guy that's a baseball player, and he's amazing. Oklahoma's offense looks the exact same as last year.
How many wins
same.
do the Cleveland Browns have with Baker Mayfield versus every other quarterback the previous 600 days?
That doesn't.
I just want to know.
By the way.
I just want to know. Does that not matter? Do they not play to win the game? We're just playing for what?
Listen, you can
talk about wins all I want? Yes, I can. Thank you.
Goulet, who do you side with on this? Because Joy's obviously anti both of us. I mean, she didn't. Joy doesn't even get the greatness of our Harbaugh.
I'm just trying to keep a sound perspective around here. That's all.
I am. So I got to tell you this though. These people are crazy. These anti-Harbaugh people.
I was going to say the anti-Mayfield people. But yeah, anti-Harbaugh people drive me nuts.
God.
Here's the thing. And Ohio State fans, you're guilty of this.
30
seconds. You can't compliment Michigan without people like, oh, getting all upset. It's like, listen, Michigan's really good, and you're going to have to deal with them this year.
And next year.
Good luck. By the way, quick some picks out there. Purdue, watch out for Purdue. They're going to Michigan State. I think Purdue could win this week. And Stanford's likely to beat Washington State. Last year, Washington State beat USC on a Friday night. The next week, they went to Cal and got drilled.
That was good stuff.
Just letting you know.
Joy, you go back and look at that tape.
Cheers.
Cheers, Klatt. On
Two-man fan club.
Cheers for
Goulet,
geniuses.
you're not invited.
Hour 3, here we go. Live in Los Angeles, iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, FS1, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Joy Taylor and I have been a lively first couple of hours. Rob Parker stopped by. Albert Breer stopped by. We just had Joel Klatt in studio tonight. Game 2, Joy, of the World Series. This is the World Series. Listen, baseball is intensely popular locally, but to make it work at a World Series, to get the biggest stars, you need a Boston, you need a Yankee, you need a Cub, you need a Dodger. So World Series Game 2 tonight at Fenway Park. Dodgers against the Red Sox. Pregame starts at 7 Eastern. Well, let's talk about Game 1. The Dodgers, Red Sox took Game 1. And the Dodgers just really looked out of sorts to me. You ever have a first day on the job? Heck, your first week at a job. Raise your hand. If you're driving in your car, don't raise your hand. Keep them on the wheel. Otherwise, raise your hand. If you had a first day on the job in the last 10 years, you know what you're always in that first day on the job fog. You got to meet a bunch of people, and you can't remember half their names. Where's the bathroom? You got the IT guys trying to set you up. You got to go to human resources and fill out that first day on the job, that first week on the job. You don't know what floor this boss is on. You forget which hallway to take to your cubicle. You're in that first week on the job, first day on the job fog. And the Dodgers were in a fog last night. Warm weather Los Angeles, cold, wet, damp, windy Fenway Park. Fenway Park's the quirkiest park in baseball. This is not an excuse. I still think Boston's going to win the series, and I think Boston has more good players. But the Dodgers got a break last night. Chris Sale, the ace for the Red Sox, was not on his best stuff, couldn't finish the 5th. It didn't matter. The Dodgers didn't look comfortable defensively. I mean, good God, Fenway Park has a garage door in center. You're telling all these guys in L.A., National League guys who never play there, yeah, there's this ballpark. There's a monster in left and a garage door in center, huh? They didn't look comfortable. They didn't manage comfortable. In fact, the only 2 guys that actually hit, one of them was Manny Machado. The other is David Freese. Not coincidentally, guys who had played and hit at Fenway Park before. There was a moment in the 7th inning, Jock Peterson came in, and this always happens. Whenever you substitute a guy in, the ball finds him immediately, right? So Jock Peterson comes in, Joe Buck with a call. Listen.
Pops it up, left side, long run. Peterson just into the game. Can't make the play. It's a double. The ball usually finds the new guy. And on a cold night, Jock Peterson could not get there.
I mean, he didn't know where the bathrooms were. He didn't know where the cafe was. He was just dealing with the IT guy. Dodgers looked so uncomfortable last night. And by the way, Fenway Park, I've been to it, is so quirky and so unique from every other park in Major League Baseball. Forget the garage door in center. The fans are right on top of you. In Los Angeles, fans are more casual and they show up in the 2nd inning. At Fenway, they show up at batting practice and they're right on top of you. It looked dark. It looked cold. It looked wet. It was windy. This was the classic example, and you've seen this before. A warm weather team in the NFL goes to a cold weather site, or sometimes the cold weather Bears go down to warm weather Miami and just melt. The Dodgers looked out of sorts all night, but this is not a shock. That is the quirkiest. Home field advantage doesn't generally mean a ton in baseball. It's basically, if you got your ace going, you quiet the crowd. But Fenway Park's one of those rare spots Fans on you, weather in October, totally loud and intense, with all these quirks, nooks, and crannies. Dodgers need to show up early for batting practice, take more infield, because that game, they even got a break last night, and they just didn't look right at all. At all. And by the way, the National League Series they just came out of was a chess match, analytically driven. Boston's a totally different team. Boston's like, here's our 9 guys, they're really good, better than yours, beat us. This is not going to be a fight like against Mayweather where it's jab, jab, move, jab. No, this is Tyson in his prime. They're coming after you. The hyper-aggressive Red Sox put their 9 guys out there, and they just come after you. And not that they don't like analytics, but it's not the Brewers. It's not multiple trips to the mound. They're going to put out their same guys. The Dodgers went analytics with their lineup yesterday, outthought the room, and looked absolutely like they were in the wrong place, at least last night. All right, I want to shift to this. There was a fight in the NBA Saturday night, Rockets-Lakers, and Chris Paul was in the middle of it. He plays for the Rockets, and Rondo was in the middle of it. And Rondo plays with LeBron James. And you can, like I said, you can blame whoever you want. Looks like Rondo spits. And Rondo got more game suspension than Chris Paul did, and Rondo fired back yesterday. He really fired back. By the way, fired back at LeBron's best friend. He said, everybody wants to believe Chris Paul's a good guy. They don't know he's a horrible teammate. They don't know how he treats people. I was going to let it rest, but I have kids, and I teach my kids to speak up for themselves. And, don't let the world tell your story. Well, I would never bring up an athlete's kids, but since Rondo brought up his kids, let me ask him this. Do you also tell your kids, if you've been difficult, every place you work, you get a reputation? And you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt here. Tell your kids that. That's also part of the story here, since you brought him up. The bottom line is Chris Paul is demanding. I've worked with a lot of demanding people. You can work with demanding people. I'm demanding. I've worked briefly with difficult people. And they're gasoline on any fire. They're instigators, la provocateurs. They're trying to start trouble. All you need to know about Chris Paul is the Pelicans and the Clippers got worse when he left, and the Rockets got better when he arrived, and he's always gotten along with his coaches. Doc Rivers and Chris Paul, the reputation was players resented how well they got along. That Doc Rivers and Chris Paul were too close. Rondo can't get along with anybody. Rondo couldn't get along with Doc Rivers. He couldn't get him out of Boston fast enough. He couldn't get along with Rick Carlisle in Dallas. Rick Carlisle, I covered in Portland. Maybe the nicest guy I've ever met in pro sports. Rick Carlisle's the nicest guy in the NBA. Everybody loves Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle could not get Rondo out of town fast enough. So there's a big difference between demanding. Chris Paul's demanding. He was demanding. Blake Griffin, hit your free throws. Learn to hit a 3, Blake Griffin. DeAndre Jordan, be in the right place at the right time. That's demanding. Rondo's not going to get the benefit of the doubt in this fight. He's not going to get the benefit. He's not as good as Chris Paul. Chris Paul has multiple examples where he's left teams they've gotten worse, entered a team they got better. I mean, New Orleans was garbage. Chris Paul ends up in New Orleans. They have their best years. Leaves, they go into the tank. Clippers were embarrassing for years. Goes to Los Angeles. Clippers aren't embarrassing. Beat the crosstown Lakers. Rockets were kind of like plateaued. Oh, he goes over to James Harden. It won't work. Oh, it does. He even got along with James Harden, who's a guard who shoots a lot. You can say what you want about Chris Paul, but he's worked with Doc Rivers. He worked in New Orleans. He's working with D'Antoni. Tell me who Rondo's worked with. I mean, tell me. Nobody. That's not demanding. That's difficult. And by the way, LeBron and Chris Paul are best friends. And you just threw LeBron's best friend under the bus. Yeah, not good. That relationship, I guarantee you, is going to be strained from this point forward. Chris Paul's got a lot more friends in this league than Rondo does. He's a better player than Rondo is, and that goes without saying. And by the way, Rob Parker brought up a very interesting point earlier, that if this is indeed the year sort of discovery for the Lakers, they're not a title team. And I believe that's true. We've called it everybody's auditioning, especially to the trading deadline, because you can't trade all these Lance Stevensons and Rondos till December. Okay, you're not allowed to. So if this is the year of auditioning, why not just play Lonzo Ball? And I'll talk more about that around the corner. Plus, coming up next, Buy, sell, and hold. One of our favorite games. A lot of stuff going on in sports. A lot of show to go.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you like.
So I was listening to radio yesterday. Gary Danielson's a college football guy for CBS, and he was on with Mad Dog Russo, and they were talking about Nick Saban and the relationship Gary has with him, having done the SEC Game of the Week for years. And Gary Danielson said, Nick likes to talk ball. And if you want to talk ball, Nick will go all day. If you're not trying to get something, you're trying to trap Nick. But if you want to talk about ball, Nick Saban, he'll invite you in the offseason, come sit in his office, let's talk ball. Belichick does the same thing. I have a friend, a very good friend, who about a year ago, before a Patriot game, about 2.5 hours before, was on the field and was introduced through Bob Kraft to Belichick. Belichick likes to talk ball. And if you want to find the warmness in his heart, ask him a smart question, and Bill will go on and on about it. He does this about once every 2 weeks. It's not his fault if you don't come prepared to the press conference. If you're going to interview Bill Belichick, then come prepared. But he's got to tell. And the way to his heart is ask him a football question that you genuinely want to know the answer to, and he's a great teacher. And Saban's a great teacher. And yesterday, Belichick, look at how long the answer is, talking about James White, what makes him special.
He's always been a very hard worker, very diligent guy, knows his assignments very, very well. Ask questions like a coach would ask him. Ability to think really far ahead, what problems could occur on certain fronts. He just knows more, and like Tom has at his position, or Devin has at his position, or Patrick at his position. Hightower, guys like that.
You said he asked questions like a coach. What does that mean?
Well, if you were talking to another coach about a play, the coach would think ahead to what are the problems that could come up on this. If they do this, if they do that, if they do something else, what if this guy lines up here instead of there? It's not just what's my assignment. It's, okay, well, what if these other things happen? How do we handle it? Are we going to switch it? Are we going to stay with it? Am I going to, could I make this call? Could I make that call?
That's called, by the way, in business, second-line thinking. Not just what's my job, but what happens if this goes wrong? What happens if this occurs? That's why the Patriots generally have more guys with a college degree on their roster than anybody else. But Belichick, once again, if you ask a question and you're genuinely interested, not snarky, not fishing for something, you're genuinely interested in learning stuff, Saban and Belichick, they'll talk. They like talking ball. They're teachers. They like that. They love doing it. But a lot of times the Boston media is fishing for something, looking ahead for something. Bill's not going to give you information to help an opponent. So if you're asking about Cincinnati and they play Cincinnati, he's not going to give you anything. But if you ask a moment, I got a question about, what do you notice the reporter goes, what do you mean by that? And then Bill tells a story. And it's like, oh, okay. There's a way to everybody's heart. Mine is a good bowl of soup.
I was going to say bread. Put the bowl of soup in bread.
The bread. Yeah, you bread and a good bowl of soup, and I just go on forever. I'm the nicest guy. Other than that, I'm cranky. All right, here we do it. It's called I'm the Stockbroker. You're looking for a tip. Buy, sell, or hold. Here we go.
Time to buy, sell, or hold.
I'd buy that for $1.
Colin will decide if he'll buy it, sell,
I want you to sell,
or hold.
Please hold.
Buy, sell, or hold. The Patriots will not lose another game this season.
Well, they're not going to lose many, but they still, in a passing league, have a dilemma. They don't have much of a pass rush. And remember, 5 of their next 7 games are on the road, and they're only 1-2 on the road this year. They're a better team at Foxborough. That goes without saying. I think they're going to lose another game, but I do think they'll win their division because they have 2 rookie quarterbacks in it, although Miami's always given them troubles down in Miami. But, John,
sell.
Patriots will lose another game.
Buy, sell, hold. Le'Veon Bell will be a Philadelphia Eagle.
Well, as Albert Breer told you earlier, the Eagles don't spend a lot of money at running back. Also, Le'Veon Bell does not need to show up until Week 10. He's got to show up after 4 Eastern next Tuesday and before Week 10, and then he will control the situation. If he shows up before that, they can trade him. And he doesn't show up into that, they can move him. So Le'Veon Bell just wants to control the situation. Trade deadline is next Tuesday, October 30th. And by the way, as much as Gurley got, generally teams that love their quarterback, like Big Ben, don't want to pay a boatload for the quarterback and the running back. They'll make a choice on that. Right now, Arizona will pay the running back because they're not paying the quarterback much, right? Josh Rosen's young. So I would say, John, sell. Le'Veon Bell will never be an Eagle.
Buy, sell, or hold. Cam Newton and Aaron Rodgers will both miss the playoffs.
Well, both right now are in the wild card position, and both have tough stretches. I think there's two things to look at. Vegas is telling you the truth. Green Bay's a 9.5-point underdog this weekend, which is incredible. Vegas is telling you they're not that good. They're simply not an elite football team. A 9.5-point NFL spread is what you give the Buffalo Bills or a rookie quarterback. Sam Darnold's only getting a touchdown this weekend with no offensive weapons and a wide receiving core. They're picking guys off the street in Chicago against the Bears pass rush. The second thing is Carolina's never had back-to-back winning seasons, so they're always roller coaster. So even though they beat Philadelphia and look great, they're now a home dog this week. Vegas is telling you, don't trust Carolina. So, John, bye. I think Cam and Aaron are going to be close. I think in Week 17 we're going to be asking the question, but I don't think they're probably playoff teams.
Buy, sell, or hold. Derek Carr will get traded before the end of the season.
I do think it's a real possibility that Derek Carr gets traded. I would not trade Derek Carr. But Jacksonville, it's got pieces. If Deshaun Watson got hurt again, if you were Houston, you could trade some pieces. Like, there's a handful of teams. Marcus Mariota doesn't make the playoffs. They got some pieces. Miami, Tannehill doesn't make the playoffs, gets hurt again. They got pieces. Derek Carr being traded, I think, is still on the table. But the question is, trading Mack and trading Cooper. If you trade Derek Carr, you completely lose the locker room. So, John, sell. I do not believe Derek Carr will get traded before the end of the season. I would not trade him, but it looks like what Gruden's telling you is we need a new roster, and you could get a lot. Don't kid yourself. You could go to a Jacksonville and get a first-round pick and a star defensive end for Derek Carr.
Last one, buy, sell, or hold. Boston will sweep the 3 major championships.
Now think about this. That means the Celtics would have to beat the Warriors. I have picked that. It would mean the Red Sox, who lead the Dodgers 1-0, would beat the Dodgers. I have picked that. You would think, because I'm a Patriots guy, right, that I would love New England going forward to win. But I don't think they match up with the Rams. I'm not sure they match up with the LA Chargers. And when Eric Berry comes back and Justin Houston for the Chiefs, and I think Kansas City's going to win their division, I don't think they can win in January in Kansas City if it's this Chiefs offense and I get Eric Berry and John Houston with D Ford the other way. I would take Kansas City in that game. So, John, sell. I actually think not the Celtics, but the Patriots going forward are not going to have home field against the Chiefs. And a second time, I would take Kansas City in that game. People, remember this. Eric Berry, the safety for the Chiefs, is one of the top 5 athletes in the league. Eric Berry is an incredible athlete. He is the only guy in the league that takes Gronk out of the game. He took Gronk out of the game. I think it was last year. So he's coming back. So is Justin Houston to go with D Ford. Then Tom will face a pass rush. Gronk will be out, and you got to stop with no pass rush that Kansas City offense. I think it's a real tough road. And if they get to the Super Bowl, I just don't think they match up with the Rams. Because what Belichick does is take your best weapon away, right? We know that, Joy? Well, I'm going to take Todd Gurley away. All right. Well, we'll just throw to one of these 3 great receivers. I think they're a nightmare matchup. Rams are a tough matchup for the Patriots. Joy with the news.
No.
Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Oh, the Raiders. John Gruden's second stint as head coach of the Raiders is off to a rough start, and it now sounds like he's quickly lost the trust of many of his players. According to Vic Tafur of The Athletic, many of the players I've talked to question the coach's accountability. It was the way the trades were handled that is bothering veteran players. When what you say and what you do are two different things, there's a problem, one player who requested anonymity said. This is the problem that I have with the situation. I've never understood why an organization, an executive, a coach, a GM feels the need to go to the players and tell them there's not going to be any moves made. Players are not stupid. They understand that there's a business side to the sport. That's why they get a check every day, or every week. I mean, there's always the potential of moves being made. There's no need to lie about it.
This is what, when Gruden got hired, I said this it was right after Labor Day. Gruden came to this organization as a TV personality, not as a football coach. He'd been a TV personality for a decade. And TV personalities talk and have to be interesting. And Gruden's first 10 days with this organization, 2 weeks, he kept talking and saying stuff. And you're like, John, you're not on television. The guys that talk in this league too much get into trouble. Belichick's figured it out. So Gruden has got about 13 quotes, and most were in the first 2 weeks.
Right.
And it's like John is now tapering back over the last week or two. But you got to be careful the information you give out because it'll come back to haunt you now.
And also, players talk to each other. Like, I'm sure that the story that Khalil Mack has, the version that he has about how things were handled, has been discussed in the locker room. Everyone knows how things really went down. And now you've created an environment of distrust between the executives and the coaches and the players. And you're not going to clear all the veteran players out of a system when you come in. And the way that they're selling players off, one NFC South front office executive told Mike Freeman, quote, "This is the most blatant example of a team tanking that I've ever seen." Now, the players aren't tanking, but... Well... And I don't know how much you can really tank in the NFL.
Aren't the Giants sort of... What are the Giants doing? It feels like the Raiders...
Something similar.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it feels very obvious that they don't want to pull the Band-Aid off the scab publicly. John's not going to say, I'm going to move off Derek Carr. The Giants aren't going to say, I'm moving off Eli Manning. But tanking in the NFL looks like what the Raiders are doing and what the Giants are doing, which is we're going to get draft picks, give up really good players. I mean, by the way, Snacks Harrison of the Giants are a really good player. Eli Apple was a first-rounder. Amari Cooper, Khalil Mack. When you give up with a losing record and you give up star players, you're basically... There's got to be a different word. It's not tanking. It's...
Preparing.
I don't know what the word
Strategizing.
is. Strategizing.
I mean, that's a fancier way of what they're doing, of saying what they're really doing. But, I mean, Khalil Mack, I don't know if that fits in that situation because that was at the beginning of the season.
But Amari Cooper is...
Amari Cooper maybe, but I don't know. I also feel like someone like Khalil Mack is not a replaceable player. You're not going to get that in the draft. I mean, I guess you could get in the draft, but are you really counting on that? And that is a position of need. So I'm not a big fan of like, let's get all these draft picks. You better be good at drafting then, because that's what you're basing the future of your franchise on. So the fallout from the Chris Paul, Rajon Rondo saga continues, especially after Rondo's comments about Paul yesterday being a bad teammate, and now some other players and former players are taking sides, including Glenn Davis. He posted this comment on Instagram yesterday saying, "I played with both of them. CP3 is a very bad teammate."
By the way, Glenn Davis didn't like Doc. Glenn Davis didn't like Chris Paul, and so...
Well, you remember there was all of that divide between Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, and Austin Rivers and DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, kind of against Chris Paul because of the Doc Rivers situation here with the Clippers.
Okay, take all the Clipper players. Who's done the best in the last year? Chris Paul.
Also, Chris Paul has had to adjust to playing with James Harden.
But he went to Houston, they won 10 more games and really outplayed the Warriors.
I don't know how much I mean, there's multiple versions of whether he's a bad teammate or not, but I do think his reputation amongst players is not great,
okay,
and that's probably why.
You know why?
It is obviously a big part of why that fight started.
In football, you're not pampered. Basketball players are pampered. AAU. College basketball. In football, you get barked at. My whole life playing football. Football coaches put on the gear. The shield is the star. Even Aaron Rodgers, like, be quiet. Don't talk publicly. Basketball, it's kind of like the elevation of the young man. Nike comes after you at 14. Then the AAU coach comes after you with swag at 17. And then the college basketball coach, just stay for 1 year. And then the NBA, you can get the coach fired. So when you get a guy like Chris Paul, who is rough on players and demanding, a lot of players just recoil. They can't take it.
Well, I would agree with all the things you're saying on that end, but I do think that there is a checks and balances amongst players And that's sort of the element of what's going on here with Chris Paul. Like, Rondo doesn't just step to Chris Paul and punch him in the face because he just was tired of Chris Paul in the game on Friday. There was a long history of build-up leading up to this. And that's why I think some other players are weighing in on this and just coming after Chris Paul in this situation. Finally, speaking of the Lakers, we know that Kobe Bryant worked tirelessly at his crafts, and a lot of that was in the gym. You were with me shooting in the gym. And he recently revealed in his book that he took up tap dancing. He's got a little Tom Brady extra work putting in stuff going on here. This is in response to him spraining his ankle in the 2000 finals. He was on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and he explained it during his appearance.
In order to protect your ankles, you learned to tap dance.
I did.
Why didn't we know this?
Well, it's kept secret for obvious reasons.
Do they make tap shoes in your size?
Had to get them made.
You had to get them made.
Had to get them. I can't go to the store and be like, hey, yeah, I'll take those size 14s. My first class, though, I walked into the studio, and it's all these 6-year-old, 7-year-old kids.
Really?
Straight up, man. Studio in Santa Monica, and these kids are looking at me like, what? No, why would you? This grown-ass man doing it here learning tap dance.
Yeah, it's really a funny visual of Kobe walking in there with size 14 tap dance shoes
Kobe's
on.
always been, Kobe's a bright dude. Kobe's is a fascinating guy. I mean, he was always one of the most obsessed guys, and then he's been very obsessed about business post-basketball. Kobe is very different. He's very different. Michael Jordan sort of now hides, and Kobe kind of hides within his business.
Kobe's completely transitioned his brand now.
Yeah,
he's all business. He's laid back. He's like the unk hanging out, working with the young players.
I think Kobe's done very well post basketball. He's looked smart. He's hit it out of the park with projects. I mean, I got to be honest with you. Kobe has been an elegant retiree. A lot of people retire in sports. They're broken down. They're pathetic. They're hustling every nickel they can make. Kobe has retired and looks really refined.
He's managed everything pretty well.
Very, very well.
He did joke that if they went 0-5, he would consider coming back.
For the San Antonio game. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
This is the way it works, and it works this way in a lot of different areas. Like in football, if you have the really conservative, rigid football coach, Jeff Fisher, defense, and you fire him, you go, let's hire Sean McVay, clever offense. In Chicago, John Fox, defensive guy. Yeah, we got to get him out of here. Let's get young, clever Matt Nagy, offensive guy. Bill Parcells is a dictator. We don't like him. Let's go Wade Phillips. He's a player's coach. What basically happens in life, this happens in relationships. You date the bad boy and you catch him cheating, and then you go to the conservative guy who is home every night at 5 after work, but you may get bored because there was something about the wild, crazy bad boy that did it for you. The pendulum in life swings back and forth. If we get tired of something, we go the opposite way. We go the extreme. Here's what's interesting about the Rondo fight. Is that Rondo is an instigator, he's intense, he's inconsistent personality-wise. The opposite of Rondo is Lonzo Ball, who is L.A. chill, L.A. laid back, incredibly consistent personality. I think LeBron can make Rondo work, and LeBron can make Lonzo work. He can make both of them work. He's going to choose Lonzo because LeBron is going to get worn out by Rondo's inconsistent play. There's TV Rondo and Tuesday in Denver Rondo. There's playoff Rondo, regular season Rondo. That's his reputation in the league. He's an instigator. He's intense. He's highly verbal. When LeBron gets tired of him, the perfect guard is Lonzo, who is totally chill. In fact, the knock on Lonzo, he's too chill. He's not verbal. He's not confrontational. Did you watch how LeBron handled the fight? He was the peacemaker. Remember last year there was a fight for the Lakers? Lonzo disappeared. They even handle fights the same way. I think the winner in this Rondo debacle is Lonzo Ball, who has the opposite personality. We do this in football all the time. We got the old crusty defensive coach. Get rid of him. We go young progressive offensive coach. You have the dictator. Oh, let's get the players coach. And we generally go too far one way. And then we swing way back the other way. And this is how it works in relationships. If you have the docile, boring husband, you go to the party boy. And then you realize, you know what? I don't like being up at 4 a.m. 3 times a week. So I think Lonzo Ball is the winner in this mess. Good show today, Rob Parker, Albert Breer, and Joel Klatt. Coming up next, an absolute must-win game for Los Angeles tonight. Best for last, I heard.
The World Series continues tonight with Game 2 as Manny Machado and the Dodgers look to bounce back from a Game 1 loss. They take on Mookie Betts and the Red Sox at Fenway Park. It's all tonight at 7:30 Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
Game 2, David Price starts. Postseason struggles are well documented, but he finally had a great start against the Astros in the American League Championship Series. So David Price is going. Manny Machado has hit him through the years. In fact, I saw the numbers this morning. 5 career home runs and 44 at-bats against him. So Manny Machado and David Price. Price has always been one of those guys, a little temperamental, a little moody, postseason, a little emotional. We'll see how it works. By the way, so John Gruden clearly doesn't like the roster, right? And I'm just thinking about this. Gruden, obviously, Khalil Mack is great. I can get picks for him. Amari Cooper, I can get picks. What basically Gruden's telling you is, I don't like the roster much. Okay, let me just say this. We got a week left of the trading deadline. If you want 2 more first-round picks, trade Derek Carr. I mean, clearly, you and Derek Carr are having issues. Clearly, Gruden's having issues in the locker room. Clearly, there are players in the locker room having trouble with Derek Carr. Like, I like Derek Carr. I'm just telling you this. On the open market, you can get a lot for Derek Carr. You can get a lot for Derek Carr. I wouldn't trade him if I was Gruden. But clearly, Gruden and he are having issues. Whenever stuff leaks out, I've always said this. It's not just what comes out in the story. It's that the story comes out. And when stories start leaking about players are losing their love for Derek Carr, why is that getting out? Because somebody wants it out. And what that tells you, that story gets out because somebody wants it out, right? If people don't want stuff out in the news, New England never leaks anything. I don't hear anything leaking out of the Rams. I don't hear anything leaking out of the Eagles. I'm hearing a lot leak out on the Raiders. Gruden's got a lot of media contacts. That story coming out on Derek Carr, he's lost the locker room, that only comes out because somebody wants it out inside the Raiders. And that tells you they're probably moving off Derek Carr. Why don't you go full rebuild? You got a week until the trading deadline, until next Tuesday.
Do you have an option besides full rebuild at this point?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're doing. So listen, you already got 3 first-round picks. Get 5. But I'm telling you, in the open market, Jacksonville would give you a first-round pick, and they'd give you an elite I mean, if I went to Jacksonville and said, I want your first-round pick, which will probably be middle of the NFL draft, so I'll have 4 first-round picks, and I want an elite defensive player or 2 good players. You'd absolutely get that. Or they'd give you a first, a second, and a moderate player. So if you're going full rebuild, you can make the argument, go all in. I
don't know if Jacksonville's an option based off of that contract that they gave Blake Bortles. But
well, Tennessee, Marcus Mariota, these organizations, Joey, are so funny.
What about Tampa Bay?
I would not trade Jameis Winston yet, and I'm really close. I'm really close. But you know what? With Jameis, he makes too many great throws. I'm real close on moving on. I don't like his immaturity. I think he needs to grow up. I'm going to give him one more chance. I'm close to. He makes way too many mistakes.
Last words.
I know, but there's something about Jameis. I'm still holding out hope because, man, he's a big, strong kid. He makes great throws.
I'd love Derek Carr in Miami. Just throwing that out there.
No, that's another team. All right, best for last.
After almost 3 hours, Colin apparently hasn't gotten to the point yet. Quit holding out on us, Cowherd. It's the best for last.
Well, I've been telling you all day, this is the next 2 weeks are the best in sports. I got baseball, I got college football on Saturdays. I've got NFL on Sundays. NBA season just started, and there's wild games and stuff. And I to be honest with you, I'm a little overwhelmed. The company asked me to cut a promo for tonight's game, and I think I screwed it up. Yeah.
They began the season facing daunting expectations. The quest to finally bring a championship back to Los Angeles.
From day one, all eyes were on this team.
Then, with the eyes of the world upon them, they suffered a crushing defeat.
Right now, some people think their season is already over, but it's not.
Tonight, they have a chance to rewrite the script and get that first win against a tough opponent.
the Phoenix Suns.
This was supposed to be a Dodger promo, not a Laker promo.
Well, you can see how I got confused.
Whatever.
Yeah, I think I screwed up. The biggest game tonight is not just the World Series. What if the Lakers go 0-4? Okay, I'm just throwing it out. Chris Haynes, NBA guy, talked about this a couple days ago. Of the teams that have gone 0-4 in the NBA, not good. 17% have made the playoffs. Here's Chris Haynes.
I will push the panic button a little bit because I think if Coach Walton hasn't made any adjustments to that roster or to that lineup by, after that Phoenix game and they're still having problems, that's when I'm thinking that's the next move, not necessarily wholesale changes.
All right. 73 teams have missed the playoffs. 15 have made it since the mid-'80s of teams that have started the year 0-4. That's 17% of teams make the playoffs when they start 0-4. I don't bet NBA basketball. I don't know what the spread is, but Phoenix hosting the Lakers.
How many of those teams had LeBron James on them?
By the way, teams that are down 0-2 in the World Series and have overcome the deficit or 11, the percent that win the series is 21.5%. Joy, the bigger game tonight is... I can't say it, but, I was just trying to make a point. It's a big game for LeBron.
It is a big game. I would say the World Series is more impactful.
Yeah, I would say you're probably right about that. Sleeping in Casper, Casper.com, code HERD, gets you $50 off select mattresses, Casper.com, code HERD. I will say this. We one of the topics we've had the last couple of days, and we've had a lot of fun with it, and there's been a lot of going back and forth. It's a really good sports topic. And to me, what makes a really good sports topic is that you can be right on both sides. So when the Raiders trade Amari Cooper, Dallas goes out and gives up a first-round pick for Amari Cooper. And by the way, it has been a mixed reaction, but probably 70-30 against the move. Now, I've come out on the other side of it. And here's why I support the Dallas Cowboys on this. Number one, the Dallas Cowboys brand has always been aggressive. When the Dallas Cowboys aggressively bought the franchise, Cowboys were losing $1 million a month when Jerry Jones bought them. It paid off. They fired Tom Landry, a legend, for Jimmy Johnson. It paid off. They traded Herschel Walker for 7 players. It paid off. They hired Bill Parcells, aggressive guy. It paid off. He rebuilt the franchise. Jerry Jones has an all-time quote where he says, "In my life, when I have overpaid a little bit, when I look back on my life, when I have overpaid for my big successes every time, when I tried to get a bargain, I either end up getting something I'm unhappy with or I'm missing it." And so what Jerry Jones is telling you is his career. Jerry World was supposed to cost $660 million. It cost $1.1 billion. It's the talk of the nation. It's the best stadium in America right now. So when I look at what the Cowboys did, I don't think they give a rip that they're going to end up paying $14.5 million a year for Amari Cooper, who's probably more of a second-round, third-round pick than a first-round pick. Jerry's history is he borrowed $1 million from Jimmy Hoffa's Teamsters Union. This is who Jerry Jones is. He is a gambler. He is a risk taker, and he's every single time he's been rewarded. When he went a little conservative. By the way, Barry Switzer got him a Super Bowl. That was a huge risk. A college coach. So now, I think a lot of people are just saying, yeah, Amari Cooper. In the end, he's not worth a first-round pick. And my takeaway is, the Seahawks didn't have a first-round pick for 3 straight years in the middle of their dynasty. The Rams this year didn't have a first or a second-round pick. The Eagles didn't. Kansas City didn't. Many of the best teams in the league didn't have first-round picks. The idea that you not having a first-round pick, here's what I know about Amari Cooper. He's a tangible asset. In the worst-case scenario, he gives you 35, 45 catches a year and only a couple touchdowns. That's the worst-case scenario. The Cowboys can still use that. Worst case scenario, he's just, 2 catches a game is 32 a year. So, Joey, is that a fair worst case scenario?
Sure.
He is 2 catches a game, which, by the way, is going to be way more than that. So worst case scenario, 2 catches a game, and how about a touchdown once a month? Okay, so 32 catches, 4 touchdowns. If you had him for 2 years, 65 catches, 8 touchdowns. That's worst case scenario?
I mean, it's not ideal, but yeah, the worst case scenario.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Albert Breer talked about what happened with the Raiders and Amari Cooper.
So his character was clean coming out of Alabama, a hard worker, a program guy, all that different stuff. He gets to Oakland his first 2 years. There was a guy there named Bill Musgrave. He's his offensive coordinator in 2015 and 16. This guy is tough to play for, Colin, just like Nick Saban. And Amari Cooper in that environment produced. I think there were some problems with Amari Cooper's work habits. And the hope was with bringing in John Gruden that would change in 2018. And they have seen a little difference. It's just not consistent.
Yeah, I think it's going to work. I think in the end, Amari, here's what I think happens. We forget that teams give up draft picks all the time. We do feel that first-round picks are gold bars, and they can be. The Rams got Goff in the first round, Gurley in the first round, and Aaron Donald in the first round. The Chiefs got Patrick Mahomes. The Colts got Luck. Yes, first-round picks are often the superstars. Elway's a first-rounder. Rodgers a first-rounder. You can give me the outliers, but Peyton Manning's a first-rounder. Marino's a first-rounder. Yes, you don't like to give those up, but the idea, the Cowboys need a receiver. They were going to draft a receiver, and I'm kind of a draft goofball. I love the draft. It's a bad receiver year. There's 2 good receivers in college football. Oklahoma's got one and he's hurt, and Arizona State's got the other. That is it. And if you go to the last 4 years in the NFL draft, wide receivers have been impossible to project. There's been like 6 busts. You know, wide receiver is the most NBA-like position in the NFL. It's always been you break the huddle first. You're kind of your own guy. You're not Willie with the team. You are a superstar athlete. It's the 6'5" guy out on the wing making stuff happen. New England has had so much trouble drafting wide receivers, Joey, they quit doing it. They wouldn't take first-round receivers. They did Chad Jackson years ago, and it bombed, and Belichick just quit. He's like, I'll get my receivers late rounds, low cost, or I'll get them from other teams like Wes Welker and Josh Gordon.
He also has Tom Brady as a luxury.
He does. But New England has kind of moved away. Like, they will not go with receivers in the first round, and they've had opportunities and they've had needs. Tonight, Game 2 World Series. Dodgers trail, try to even it up at Fenway Park. Huge show tomorrow. Nick Swisher, outstanding baseball guy, joins us. Greg Cosell, Chris Haynes, and Tom Penn. Lakers desperately need a win. Not as bad, probably, as the Dodgers do tonight. All fired up. Radio, see you tomorrow. TV, stick around. Speak for yourself is around the corner.